All right. Welcome to the Wyoming Water Development meeting. Few housekeeping things before we get started. Microphones are on. Katie's holding up a red card. Means you're not talking loud enough. These are live over the internet, so be watchful of what you're saying. And if your cell phones are on, could you please turn them to silent or off? With that, Mr. Secretary, the secretary isn't here. Who's our assistant secretary? Dave, or aren't you the assistant secretary? Okay. Roll for us. Okay. Since Clint's not here.
All right. Jeanette Seekin.
Here.
And Karen Bud Fallon.
Here.
Nick Travis.
Here.
Sheridan Little.
Here.
Gerald Geis.
Here.
Larry Suker.
Here.
Rod Wagner.
Here.
Kellen Lancaster.
Here.
David Evans here.
I have a quorum.
And Clinton Glick.
Not present. Okay. We have a quorum. Next item is election of officers.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Geis.
I would nominate Dave Evans as our next chairman.
I'd second it.
Okay. Moved and seconded to nominate Dave Evans as chairman. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Here you go, sir.
You
got to get out of here, so.
Nope.
Yeah, no kidding.
And this quick, so and Sheridan and Gerald are pretty far down the table, so that means I'm in trouble. Okay. Well, I just first wanted to thank Sheridan for his chairmanship. Be a hard act to follow. He did a great job, and welcomed all the sponsors today, because that's why we do what we do. I think the first thing we need to do is approve the agenda as written. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, we have some other officers I believe we have to elect.
Secretary.
Oh, sorry about that.
And Mr. Chairman, I think it's appropriate to look at a vice chairman as well as a vice secretary in the event that there's an absence at a meeting. It helps our meetings flow better.
I make a motion that Larry Suker be a vice chairman.
Second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And then I think we need a vice secretary. Is that what you said, Harry?
Well, secretary number one, and then a vice secretary as well.
Do I have a motion for secretary?
I nominate Mr. Wyden.
We've got a motion in a second. And does anybody want to withdraw their motion, or do you want to ignore? Okay, motion's withdrawn.
Thank you.
We have another motion for secretary.
I move we nominate Kellen Lancaster.
Second.
Okay. All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, aye, or nay. Motion carries. And now we need a vice secretary nomination. Do I hear one?
I nominate Karen Bud Fallon.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Are there any more officers to elect that we're aware of? All right, so we've got new officers. That's good. And The next item is approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to do that?
Second.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just for everybody's information, I know I talked to a few of the commissioners this week. The one thing that has changed on the agenda before you this morning is item 15, proposed Chapter 8 rules. And that was not on the earlier agendas that you had seen going out before this meeting. But the public comment period closed, I think it was Monday at 11:59 p.m. And originally I had intended that we would put this on the June agenda, which would give us time to respond to public comments received for the June meeting. Well, we did not receive any comments with regards to this rulemaking proposal. So I feel comfortable moving it forward to you today. So that's why we added it to the agenda. And this new agenda was advertised on our website, and then Katie did send it out to our media contacts around the state to meet the required meeting advertisement requirements. So that was done 2 days ago. So that's the big change in this agenda.
Any other information on the agenda? We had a motion in a second. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We've got the minutes to approve, both the workshop and the meeting. I think we can do them together. Does anybody have a motion to approve the minutes that are listed in the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We got a
Second.
got a motion in a second. Any discussion, corrections?
Chairman,
Yes.
and that's the motion and the second as they come in as to who you're recognizing for those, please.
Having to remember that, but the motion was by Commissioner Wagner and the second was by Commissioner Geis. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Or we did that? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries, and now we have audience introductions. Why don't, we'll go around this way.
Or however.
Alan Lancaster, Wyoming Water Development Commissioner from District 4, and I live in Afton.
David Evans, Commissioner for District 1, Southeast Wyoming, and I live in Cheyenne.
Rod Wagner, Wyoming Water Development Commissioner, District 1, live in Lingle.
Larry Suker, Water Development Commission, District 2.
Gerald Geis, District 3, what takes in all the Bighorn Basin and Fremont County. I live in Worland.
Sheridan Little, Wyoming Water Development Commission, Water Division 2.
Nick Bettis, Wyoming Water Development Commission, District 4. I live in Kemmer.
Karen Bud Fallon, Wyoming Water Development Commission, representing the public at large, and I live in Cheyenne.
Jeanette Seacon, Wyoming Water Development Commission, Division 3. I live in Cody.
Neil Solish, Attorney General's Office.
Katie Talbot, Water Development Office.
Barry Labonte, Director, Water Development Office.
Jody Green, Water Development Office.
Barry Lawrence, Water Development Office.
I'm Brian Clark, Water Development Office.
Jason Mead, Water Development Office.
Keith Clary, Water Development Office.
Joe Gillis, Boulder Irrigation District, Boulder, Wyoming, Commissioner.
Frosty Hiddle, Silver Lake Irrigation District, Boulder, Wyoming.
Susie McNevich, Silver Lake Irrigation District, Boulder, Wyoming.
Jim Lola, Laparelle Irrigation District, Douglas.
Holt Rodeman, Laparelle Irrigation, Douglas.
Chris Nicholson, Water Resources Data System.
Morning, Steve Wolf, State Engineer's Office.
Eric Thornfight, Bluff Canal System.
Lloyd Moore, Laparelle Irrigation District.
Wade, Wayne. Greg Kerr, UW Office of Water Programs.
Tom Troxel, City of Torrington.
Guy Chapman, Salt Creek Joint Powers Board.
Jamie Jones, Salt Creek Joint Powers Board.
Jamie Duran, Salt Creek Joint Powers Board.
Michelle Gibbs, Salt Creek Joint Powers Board.
Buck King, Salt Creek Joint Powers Board.
Travis Anderson, Salt Creek Joint Powers Board.
Casey Grammel, Hog Island ISD, Jackson.
Ty Ross, Hog Island ISD.
Bob Robertson, Hug Island ISD.
Jolene Ross, Sunrise Engineering, Cheyenne.
Jennifer Russell, SEH, Cheyenne.
Kevin Boyce, Water Development Office.
Dean Barker, City of Evanston.
Tony Rutherford, Water Development Office.
Cheryl Bean, GBA here in Cheyenne.
John Joyce, Bighorn Regional.
Randy Youngren, YC, Jackson.
GIS, Roby, White Consultants, Jackson. Jason Miller, Water Development Office. Dave Meyer, Water Development Office. Joel Stump, HDR Engineering, Cheyenne. Peter Dale, Water Development Office.
Thank you, everybody. And next topic of business is a couple of closeout memos. Harry?
Mr. Chairman, the closeout memos are under tab D in your notebook. We have two of those. The first one is Rolling Hills, and Kevin Boyce is our project manager, so I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. And commission members. You'll see in front of you under the aforementioned tab a final project closeout memo for a groundwater exploration grant project. You're witnessing the first project closeout memo under this program. And this was for a replacement well drilled for the town of Rolling Hills, Wyoming in Converse County. The contract number is 6827, executed 12/20/2016. Original contract amount $315,000. Final contract amount $297,249.21 for a resulting contract savings of $17,750.79. And the reversion of that amount in this closeout will leave $389,521.81 in the groundwater grant program. Quick description: the town of Rolling Hills applied for a grant to replace their Rolling Hills #2 well, which failed. It was a well drilled in 2001. It failed. The screened casing and screen portions lost the cement behind lost a good portion of the seal behind the casing. That resulted in an extreme production of sediment, sand, clay, shale chips, with the resulting turbidity when the well was pumped of over 1,000 NTUs, which is a turbidity unit measurement. Safe drinking water, the NTUs for safe drinking water maximums are in the low single-digit NTUs, so this was pretty black production water. So this rendered the well unusable and irreparable. In the summer of 2017, a successful replacement well was drilled under the program. The town utilized municipal funds to complete the well with drop pipe pump power and a connection to the town system. The well was actually drilled right at the tank on the south side of Rolling Hills. And the well was subsequently put into use in October 2017. On the rest of the memo, you'll see just some particulars of the well. It was drilled to a depth of 2,095 feet, completed in the Lance Formation. There are approximately 10 intervals screened with about 200 feet of total feet of screen. Static water level after drilling and completion was 273 feet. Completed on July 6, 2017. Tested for 7 days at a constant rate of 62.2 gallons per minute with 795.6 feet of drawdown. So we've got a good replacement well for them. Contractor was DC Drilling out of Lusk. And
Questions of Kevin? Do I have a motion to accept the final report and close out the project?
So move. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Suker and second by Commissioner Geis. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries.
Chairman, the next project then is the UW Irrigation Water Supply Study. The University of Wyoming, and Keith Clary is our project manager.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commission. This project was the UW Irrigation Water Supply Study Level 2. It was for the University of Wyoming. The legislature in 2016 authorized an appropriation of $270,000. The consultant selected was Wyoming Groundwater LLC out of Laramie. The contract was executed on June 14th, 2016. The original amount of the contract was for the full appropriation of $270,000. The final contract amount was $268,023.76. The contract savings amount was $1,976.24. In accordance with the 2015 session of the 63rd Legislature of the State of Wyoming, Enrolled Act number 56, the University of Wyoming sought WWDC funds to develop non-potable surfaces or sources of groundwater for the irrigating the Red Jacoby Golf Course. The university believed the benefits of completion of such a level 2 study would lead to a reduction in the use of potable water for irrigation, reduction in man hours to operate and maintain the golf course, a better financial outlook for the golf course operation, and better turf quality. After the appropriation and the contracting, the July to September 2016 geophysical investigation identified several potential target areas for well construction located east of the golf course, and one site was selected for construction of the test production well. The hydrogeological interference opinion technical memorandum was completed on October 25th, 2016, prior to drilling. The drilling and construction of a 756-foot deep Casper Aquifer Test Production well JRA-1, was accomplished in November to December 2016. Subsequent testing indicated the well JRA-1 would yield approximately 75 gallons a minute, and this yield was considered to be insufficient to utilize the well for irrigation purposes for the golf course. The well was capped and locked on January 11th, 2017. The consultant was directed to complete the draft report at that point. So there was no public presentation and no public hearing. And the final report, executive summaries, are available online under Laramie area, Laramie region. And they're listed here as the websites. The WWDO recommendation is to convert this deep test well to a Casper Aquifer monitoring well, and for the well to be used for future research purposes by the University of Wyoming. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
What ultimately happened here? I mean, what did the university end up doing for water, or what came about?
They're currently still purchasing water from the city of Laramie.
Any other questions? You see a motion at the end of the report, which has got 3 recommendations. So does anybody want to read that motion and make it?
With difficulty, I'll make that motion. Since we all know why.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Commissioner Seaton and seconded by Commissioner Bettis. Any further discussion or comment? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman.
The next item of business is a planning amendment for the Goose Creek watershed study.
Chairman, under tab E in your notebook, you'll find that particular amendment. excuse me, Jody Pring is our project manager, so I'll let her present that to you. It's a time extension only amendment.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Jody Pring, Water Development Office. I'm here today to present a contract amendment for the Goose Creek Watershed Study. And as Harry mentioned, this is a amendment for time only. I'm requesting additional 6 months to complete this project. We still are looking for the hydrology work on this, and then we're incorporating additional comments from the final draft presentation that we did into the report. So like I said, just extending the contract from June to December. So I'd stand for any questions.
Motion to approve the amendment. A second?
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Geis and a second by Commissioner Little. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item of business is a construction amendment, number 8 for the Gillette Madison Pipeline Agreement.
So, Mr. Chairman, that amendment 8 is under tab F in your notebook. So let me give you a little bit of background here. The original agreement was put forth in 2009. This is the agreement that provides the funding mechanism from Water Development Commission to the City of Gillette to build the Gillette Madison Pipeline project. And as you see, on page 1 of the amendment, very brief description of amendments 1 through 7. Those amendments have been brought forward when additional funding was added to this project, and this project was funded over a number of years. So that's kind of the history of this agreement and those amendments. So if you turn to page 2 of the amendment, and what we are amending then is paragraph 4V, and under 4V there are 3 existing subparagraphs, 1, 2, and 3, and you see them listed, and we are adding the 4th paragraph, or proposed. But here's the reason for that, and if you look at subparagraph 1, top of page 2, it says, "There shall be no lease, sale, assignment, or transfer or ownership of water from the project for purposes other than the sponsor's municipal and rural domestic use as determined by the commission in its sole and absolute discretion without prior written approval." So on all of our projects, as that legislation goes through, we state the use. The Gillette Madison project use is for municipal and rural domestic use. That was in the 2009 legislation bringing the project forward. So in the most recent legislative session, and we talked about this in March, there were amendments made to Gillette regional extension projects, and there were 2 in that bill. And in that bill, and I'm quoting from the most recent 2018 legislature, agree to allow water for domestic, livestock, and miscellaneous use as provided in this subdivision for applicants. This goes back to the issue that's now was identified last year, where there were some private wells in Crook County close to the Madison wells that were dewatered, and then wells were identified in a slightly deeper aquifer as being acidic. And so that the discussion going forward of what we're going to do there continues. But the legislature brought through this bill to allow new uses, livestock and miscellaneous water use. That was not in the funding agreement from 2009. And so in discussions with the City of Gillette, in trying to mitigate the issues that have been identified in Crook County, Gillette has brought, what Gillette will need to do is, one, they will need to enlarge and add the use of livestock and miscellaneous use to 1 or more of the wells in their well field. And currently there's 10 existing and 5 new as part of this project. So they need to provide the stock use, basically. And then when we went back into this agreement, and lo and behold, this paragraph, subparagraph 1 that I was reading would seem to indicate that if they were to allow stock use, then there is a provision that 2/3 of the revenue derived from that sale would come back to the Water Development Commission. That paragraph is pretty standard in all of our agreements, and it's really intended for a scenario where a community would be selling water outside of their municipal service area for other uses, and oil and gas use is the one that comes to mind. We cost share with those entities when they sell that water and it goes outside of their jurisdiction. 2/3 of that revenue on our projects are supposed to come back to water development. Gillette pointed out that this is a problem, and realistically, that really isn't the intent of this paragraph, to look at stock use that might be fed off of this pipeline. And with the recent 2018 legislative action, which would seem to indicate not only is it rural, domestic, and municipal use, but now livestock and miscellaneous use are now allowed via this project. So the amendment adds subparagraph 4, so about 2/3 of the way down on page 2. It says, pursuant to the 2018 Wyoming Session Laws, Chapter 121, Section 4V1 shall not apply to domestic, livestock, parentheses, stock, and miscellaneous water use of applicants for taps from existing or extended transmission lines in Crook County. So what that will do then is it removes this payback provision if Gillette were to furnish water to those water users in Crook County as identified in the 2018 legislation. Excuse me. So questions, Mr. Chairman? Is that clear as mud?
Mr. Chair. So does the non-payback provision only apply to those users who believe their water has been, their wells have been dewatered by the Gillette Madison project, or does it apply now to anyone who goes to the city of Gillette and wants to acquire water for stock water purposes?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bud Fallon, it applies to any taps in Crook County by virtue of this legislation. And the legislation, I didn't read the entire section, basically says that the sponsor is to provide up to 200 taps in Crook County for these other uses. And so that's where that paragraph 4 will apply to. If it were to come back into Campbell County, it would not apply as currently written.
Any other questions of Harry? Okay. Do we have a motion to?
Wait, Mr. I'm just trying to.
Okay, all right. I'll give you a little time to turn.
Slow.
Go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, so does this applies to existing as well as the new 200?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Seacon, yes. And I don't believe there are any existing taps that are providing stock use. The city's been very specific. We can't provide stock use by virtue of our agreement and by virtue of the legislation. So now this new legislation says, Gillette, you will provide up to 200 taps in Crook County for all of these uses. And so we're expanding those uses and again, getting rid of the payback provision for those specific 200 taps, whatever they might be.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve the amendment? Okay.
That we.
By Commissioner Seeker.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wagner. Any discussion? Discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thanks, Harry. Next item of business is a report on idle state-owned commission wells.
Mr. Chairman, under tab G, you'll see a one-page report, really a listing of wells that water development has drilled over the years that are not currently being used for beneficial use. And there's various reasons for those wells. But I wanted to provide this list to you because later on in your agenda today, you're going to handle a water service agreement in Aladdin. That water is being provided by, I guess I would say, an idle well. It was a well that was drilled for a district, and then that district never came forward and bought that well from the state of Wyoming or from Water Development. And as you go through that listing, you can see some in the early 1980s, there were several wells that were drilled. I'll look at Little Goose and Big Goose. Those were drilled for Sheridan as a potential supplemental supply. They're not being utilized. You see Natural Bridge was an observation well we drilled. Edgerton Midwest were drilled potentially for them and not utilized. And then you get down to a category, Ryan Park, Pine Butte, Aladdin, which you have an action item later on. Buffalo Creek number 2 well is part of a new application for a level 2 study, an expanded level 2 study. That well was drilled in 2004 and ultimately capped because it was viewed as a potential water supply for these districts outside of Thermopolis. They ultimately connected to the city of Thermopolis, so that well sits idle today. Then there's a group of wells. You see 2005 Split Rock wells. Those were drilled looking for replacement water supplies for our obligations under the North Platte decree with Nebraska. Belvoir Ranch wells, a number of those have been drilled in an exploratory fashion on the Belvoir Ranch as a future water supply for Cheyenne. Cheyenne has not currently moved forward with developing that well field at this point. Ethity was capped due to poor water quality. Lance Creek, there were 2 wells drilled there. One had poor water quality, as you see, high arsenic. The other was good quality. That district never came forward to connect to that well, principally because they did not like the payback provision that we just discussed on the Gillette project. And it was their intent to use that well, or at least that part of that production from that well, to sell to oil and gas operations outside of their jurisdiction. And when we explained to them that then in that case, 2/3 of that revenue needs to come back to the state, they abandoned the projects. Claremont, we've drilled a deep well. Water quality was a little bit questionable on that one, so then we drilled an alluvial well. That has shown to not be satisfactory, and the community is looking to potentially acquire or to develop the deep well on that particular project. So my message to you this morning is that with regards to these level 2 exploration wells, there is the potential when we drill those wells that they may not ultimately be utilized by the districts that are making the requests. And so I think from a commission perspective, we should be somewhat cautioned or use caution when we have that request and need to be asking the questions, is this a district that intends to go forward and utilize this well if it's a successful well? If they don't, then we end up owning these wells and they are capped, and we've made an investment that in some cases is not put to beneficial use. And so again, it's more to give you an idea of the landscape of what we've done over our history. And then, as I said, there's a couple of projects that we're going to discuss this morning, well, more than a couple, that we have level 2 requests. And I am questioning with regards to whether we'll put the work into drilling a new well, but will it be actually incorporated into a water system and beneficially used? So that's a question that I would like to leave with you as we go forward with the rest of the projects this morning. Questions, Mr. Chairman?
Did the sponsor know before we did that test well that that was part of our criteria and provisions that they would have to pay us back something? I mean,
Mr. Chairman, which one?
you said that one of them decided not to use it because of
I think
they,
it was
Lance Creek.
yes.
Yes.
Did they know that if we did this, that would, and it moved forward, that this is part of the deal?
On the Lance Creek, Mr. Chairman, I believe they were not aware of that contractual provision because that shows up in level 3. And in fact, we have funded a level 3 project for them. They have refused to sign the project agreement. So that particular project will cancel, or the funds will revert this June 30th. And so in the level 2 stage, when they made the application, I'm not sure they were aware of that ultimate provision in terms of
Maybe we
future
should
use.
make them, all of the sponsors, aware so that we don't go through a level 2 or level 3 and find us owning some wells that are not going to be used.
Harry, do we have a total tabulation of what all these wells cost? And you may have to go back a long ways. It looks like some of them were drilled in the 80s, but it would be nice to know how much the Water Development Commission or the state of Wyoming put into these wells with no use.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Suker, I don't have that tabulation today. I believe that's something we can develop. The question mark will be those wells in the early 80s, whether we still have records that would give us the cost, but we can certainly update that and bring that forward at a later meeting.
They're the ones I think that we can. And I know it's old history, and we may not have those at our so. Thank you.
Other questions of Harry? I've got a couple questions, Harry. I know some of these, like these Belvoir Ranch wells, I don't know if they'll utilize any of those particular wells, but I know that's a well field that'll be developed eventually when the population gets to where it has to be or there's drought. If those are state-owned wells, what happens when they want to use them? That you have an agreement that kicks into Bean that transfers it over to the municipality, or what?
So, Mr. Chairman, the standard process that we use is the exploratory wells are drilled under a level 2. Water Development pays 100% of those costs. When the well is then incorporated into a water system as a supply point, a supply source, in the level 3 project, then the sponsor is required to buy that well from the state, and the price they pay is 1/3 of the actual value, which then translates into a 2/3 grant, 1/3 actual cost to the community. So the sale or transaction actually happens in level 3, but that is the intent. And so the point, again, I'm discussing is from level 2 to level 3 on a number of these wells, that transaction, that sale never happened because the level 3 project was not developed.
Well, the only other comment I have in addition to what Commissioner Hooker is asking for the cost, if you could break that out between wells that will likely never be used and ones that likely will be used, or at least part of a well field. I think that'd be helpful too. Otherwise, it seems like it might be a little misleading. So I'd ask for that too.
Mr. Chairman, fine.
There's no other questions of Harry. Thank you for that report, and we'll move on to a water service contract renewal, item 11 on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, this deals with one of those idle, it's on the idle well list, but it has been utilized, but not in a transferred ownership perspective. So when the Aladdin well was drilled in the 1990s, let me look at that date. Looks like 1995. And has everybody been to Aladdin? Kind of a wide spot in the road. There's a store there, and there's some trailers. There's some residences there. They had approached water development. Level 2 well was drilled, and in fact, a district was formed, but the district never moved forward with a level 3 project. And so at that point, then they approached the state and said, well, we're not in a position to buy that well, but we'd like to buy water from that well. And so that led to an agreement starting in 1999. And then that well was that agreement was subsequently renewed, that we were selling them water, and we sold them water at $1.20 per 1,000 gallons. Aladdin's been in the news in the last year because the longtime owner is selling Aladdin, and I believe there's a buyer identified. And lo and behold, in the context of all of this, their water supply or water service agreement expired. So we want to put this back in proper contractual form in place. And so we are proposing a new water service agreement with the Aladdin Water District. And we are proposing then to sell them water at a new price of $2 per 1,000 gallons. And as I understand, the buyer of Aladdin is very much interested in continuing this, and he wants to make sure a water service agreement is in place before he goes forward with the actual purchase of Aladdin. So we are proposing a 5-year agreement, $2 per 1,000 gallons. And just to give you a comparison, we checked around a couple of the communities. Gillette, for example, in terms of their bulk water sales, $3.01 per 1,000. That price, I believe, has some value added in terms of storage, in terms of disinfection, and in terms of transmission of water to various points in and around Campbell County. Here we have a well, that's the only obligation. We do not maintain that well. We do not maintain the pump. And so a reduced price from what a Gillette, say, is charging, I think is appropriate. But $1.20, I think, had been in place, again, since 1999. We are proposing a $2 per 1,000 gallon charge, which I believe is similar to or a reasonable market price today. Questions?
What was our original investment in the well? Do you have that number? What's our rate of return? If there is any.
Mr. Chairman, I do not have that information.
Chairman? They've been paying since the contract expired?
Mr. Chairman, there was a period where they were not paying, but they are now current. We have received payment.
Harry? Do we have a motion to renew the water service contract with the Aladdin Water District?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Geis, second by Commissioner Little. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Sucre?
I think the rate is not, it may be compatible with other users. I just think it's, for what this involves, a very small community, I don't think it's enough on the chart.
In fact, I wouldn't mind seeing if we could renegotiate that. I wouldn't mind if we could renegotiate that, if we could.
Mr. Chairman, my suggestion is if you want to amend this agreement, motion to approve, motion to amend that rate. If you have a rate in mind today, we can do that. Or if you would like to do some more research, we can certainly do that and bring it back. However, I can tell you that the difficulty we have in comparison is, just like in Gillette, there is value added to the water that they sell to get to $3.01 per gallon. We're not adding any of that value. We just have an asset and we're allowing them to use the water. Beyond that, We don't disinfect. We don't provide any storage or transmission. So that's where we came to a comfortable rate of $2 per thousand. But if the commission would want to seek a higher number or a different number, I think you can amend that into the agreement today, and we'll take that back to Aladdin.
Commissioner guys.
They own the pump and everything is in the well. Wyoming doesn't own the pump or anything like that.
Verify. Kevin?
Correct.
Okay.
They own the pump, supply the power.
It's hard for me to determine a value unless I know what we got into the original development of the well. And I'm not saying we should get a return on our investment totally, but if that's a $500,000 well, and I'm just guessing, I don't know what it is, but I guess those numbers would quantify what I think we should charge by the gallon, at least support some.
We've got two choices here. We can either, as Harry suggests, come up with a number, and Commissioner Suker is saying he's not sure if he can, or we could table this till next meeting so that, because if we deny the motion, it's gone, as I understand it. So to me, it'd be better to have a motion to table it in a second and vote to table it to the next meeting, and the staff could look at a higher rate. Harry?
Mr. Chairman, I'll suggest a third option. If you want to postpone that in this agenda and take it up later, we should be able to give you a cost of what we invested in drilling the well in 1995-ish. What we won't have today is return on investment, how much water has been sold over the history, but we can certainly, I believe, come up with the cost that was invested to drill the well today, if that's enough information.
Come up with a range of price above $2 that the commission could consider today.
Chairman, we can certainly have that discussion later on today once we know the cost. What I will tell you again, we've at least at the staff perspective, and we haven't done a detailed analysis, but again, in coming up with the $2 per thousand, there's no cost to the commission at this point in time. And whereas a municipality who is providing water, as I mentioned, disinfection, storage, and I did not mention electricity, all of those costs are paid for by the water buyer outside of this $2 per thousand. So I think really $2 in my mind is reasonable. But if you want to postpone this in today's agenda, we'll get that cost for you.
One more comment. Is this the president? I'd love the commission to come drill me a well, and I'll pay you $2 a thousand forever. And if that's what I just think that the cost is irrelevant to the investment. That's my problem. I know we can't help what we did,
Make a motion to.
but I would make a motion that we do $4 a thousand gallon and allow that to go into the contract today. We can always change this in 5 years, so I will make that motion.
I think it's a motion to amend the current motion. Is that correct? Let me see if we have a second on that first. Okay, I'm not hearing a second. It seems like the commission is not quite ready to do that yet. So we're back on the original motion. Commissioner Bud Fallon.
Can I ask a question first? Do we have to do this today? I mean, I don't know whether $2 is right or $4 is right or $23 is right. I think that unless there is I'm all for renewing a service contract. I mean, I've been to Aladdin, and I think they need water. But I think I'd like a much more thorough understanding of how the staff got to $2. I'd like to see the baseline numbers myself. I don't know that I think that I'll be comfortable voting at the end of the day. And unless there is some reason like Aladdin won't have water tomorrow, if we put this off till June, I think that we ought to postpone this, get some real numbers, see what Larry is talking about, and then come up with a legitimate number And I think you ought to talk to the guy who's buying Aladdin and see, maybe have him come talk to us about why he thinks $2 is right. I mean, I think if we start guessing numbers now, we're just pulling numbers out of thin air, and I'm not comfortable doing that at all.
Well, that would get us back to a month till June, but Harry, do you have any?
So, Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, this sale is somewhat on hold because there is no water service agreement today. And that is a concern of the buyer in moving forward. They want to get this agreement put in place. I think, well, if you want additional information, we can certainly provide that in terms of what other communities charge. But you need to recognize that charge that communities provide has all of those value added costs in that. That's how they come up with that. That's how Gillette comes up with $3.01. In this case, we have no additional cost in terms of operation and maintenance. We do have the initial investment. We can get that number for you today. And if we want to look at what kind of return on investment, we can certainly develop that analysis. But again, it's an asset that was drilled. We have no ongoing costs. So that's where they have been buying it. It is their water supply. And I certainly think $2 may actually be on the high side if you look at actual O&M costs that we're incurring. We have none. So
I think that we've got to go, Mr. Commissioner Guys.
We have a motion on the table. Let's vote on it. And then
What is the motion?
Well, the motion is to renew the contract. What I'm afraid of is if we vote on it, it's dead. It seems to me it's better to table it.
Not dead. We're getting the $2. And we have no expenses. Otherwise, the well's just sitting there, not generating anything and stagnant. So I'd say this is not a bad deal at $2 a thousand.
Well, unless I hear a motion to table it, we've got to go ahead and vote on this motion.
Question on
Okay.
the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we table this. We give Harry time to come up with the stuff that Larry talked about, how much money we've got in the well, how much these guys are selling the water for, and all that additional information so that he can come back to us with a range at the June meeting that says, yeah, we did this thing, we did this other stuff. I guess where I'm at as far as the buyers, I think it's too bad, but that's really not our problem. You know, I just from my standpoint, I'd rather make sure that the taxpayers are getting a good return on their investment and that this is a proper rate that we're assessing these people.
And Commissioner Bettis, the motion to amend is to the June meeting, correct?
Yep.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, so motion by Commissioner Bettis to table this till the June meeting, second by Commissioner Seacon. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor say aye.
Wait, we got two motions now, right?
No, I think the motion to table is superior to the main motion.
The other.
And
Okay, I
send
just
this into
I
Jared.
want to know what I'm voting yes on.
Yeah, you're voting on the motion to table. Sorry.
Okay, all right. I'm hanging out with Nick. All right.
So
we're good.
I'll ask again, is there any further discussion on the motion to table?
Question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries, tabled until the next meeting to come back to answer the questions of the mayor of Pine Haven. So next order of business is the 2019.
Wait, can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
Harry, I understand about the value added argument. I mean, we argue about with grazing fees all the time because it's not a subsidy, it's value added. So when you're developing your costs, can you also include in things like the cost of the pump and the cost that the town of Aladdin is actually paying so that because I don't think you can compare value added to not value added. I'd like to know the cost of the value that they're adding so that we can really compare apples to apples instead of just saying $3 versus $2, because that's not a fair cost comparison when you consider value added. Does that make sense?
Lancaster?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
The other thing to throw in there is how many hookups there are, and obviously there's a meter, or we wouldn't know what obviously there's a meter, or we wouldn't know how many gallons, how many users.
The only other thing I'd say in recognition of Commissioner Geis's comments, if you come back with $2, I think that's fine. It's just a matter of more information needed by the commission. So, so now that moves us on to the next order of business, 2019 planning level 1 and 2 project applications. Harry?
So, Mr. Chairman, I believe there's 10 projects through here. These are all projects that are derived from applications received by March 1 in the new planning schedule. So these are projects, if you agree to move them forward today, then we will then move forward with the selection of engineering consultants through the summer months, and then with interviews culminating, I believe, this coming fall. So because my recommendations to you on a number of these are to do not fund, I would suggest that you handle as a separate motion each project application rather than a bulk. And I think that we have a number of sponsors here today that will want to discuss aspects of their application and may not agree with my recommendation entirely. So I think it's going to be cleaner if we handle them as individual motions, Mr. Chairman. Just saying.
By me.
Okay. So moving forward, then the first project is the Evanston Water Master Plan. Evanston last did a master plan in 1997, and obviously things have changed in that community since then. They're actually, at least in our conversations with them, contemplating a level 3 application this fall for a tank project. But nevertheless, I think it is important for communities to keep up to date on their planning, because it really then lays out the framework of where they're going to go with a capital improvements program. So you see then the recommendation level 1, which is reconnaissance / master plan, proposed budget to be determined. And just a reminder that in our new process, that budget will be established based on the selected engineering consultant's cost proposal that you'll receive this fall, and then we'll incorporate that into recommendations at your November meeting, and then ultimately leading to 2019 water planning bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would just stand for questions. We have a sponsor here. Come on up, please.
Questions of Harry or the sponsor for the town of Evanston master plan, city of Evanston, excuse me.
My name's Dean Barker. I'm the city engineer, city of Evanston. I've been there just over a year. And thank you for your consideration, and have some things going on in Evanston and some new things, exciting things going, and want to look at our infrastructure. And we have some pretty old infrastructure, and first step is to update our water master plan that's well over 20 years old. So
my pep was the population 20 years ago. What is it today?
It's 12,500 today. 20 years ago, I'm going to be guessing around 11,000, 10,000. Has not grown that much. Had a little bit of growth in 2008, and it's really leveled off since then.
Questions of
Yes, were the projects that you did since the 97 master plan, were those the projects that came out of that master plan?
Yeah.
And do you have remaining projects from that master plan?
Yeah, so the original, I believe it's 82 or 84 study. Since then, several projects have occurred. The 97 was mostly focused on our secondary water irrigation system. And since then, I can't remember the exact date, 2005 or so, they did run that secondary water to our golf course, to the high school. Although the high school hasn't hooked up, we're working with the high school on that. So that was the main project of the 97 study, was secondary water to alleviate the tank and storage.
Any other questions? Harry or the sponsor?
I would move.
Second. The motion by Commissioner Banks and the second by Commissioner Bettis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And Salt Creek Master Plan.
Chairman, again, another master plan, level 1 study, budget to be determined. As you see in the write-up, well, let me describe the system. Midwest Edgerton, north of really Casper. They actually got an interesting history because their water is piped from the North Platte Valley, really the North Platte River Basin, to their communities. At one point, it was, as I understand it, a raw water line. But then in 1996, a new line was constructed, and they are currently buying water from the Central Wyoming Regional Water System, which provides water for most of the Casper area. So this is, reaching out with regards to a regional system. Their request is for a master plan for their water systems. There has not been a master plan done of their particular area, and it would certainly look at the existing condition of this 1996 pipeline. But my recommendation is that we move to level 1, and we do have representatives from the sponsor here. Or I thought.
Representative want to come forward or not?
My name's Jamie Jones with the Town of Midwest Salt Creek Joint Powers Board. We appreciate your consideration today.
Questions of Harry or the sponsor, Commissioner Suker?
I guess you want to see a study for what particular reason, I guess. Because I do know you're getting water out of the Casper. Is that water not ample supply, or do you feel you need another source, I guess? What's the particular reason for the study?
The particular reason for the study is upon completion of the water line in 1996, at that point in time, we were in dire straits of needing water. At that point, we did acquire some funding to get the water source established with the Central Wyoming Regional Water System, which part of that agreement was both Midwest and Edgerton had to go in together in order to receive that funding. As a bang for the buck type of a project there. At that point in time, the line was laid, and since then, regular maintenance has been maintained. We've had a sporadic period of leaks, of transmission line issues. We do know that the pumps are aging. We do know that the infrastructure as a whole has declined just over the course of the life of the line, and the transmission line, the components within. So at this point in line, the desire for this study is to get a good overview of where we're at, the lifespan of all the materials in place. We've gone through several agencies to acquire funding for some emergency repair. We've got another project on the board that we're trying to rehab a mile of that line that we know is troublesome. Trying to stay proactive as best we can. But at this point, we'd like to get a general overview of the whole system condition, utilizing the master plan.
That line was put in. That line was put in with PVC plastic pipe. So what's the decline? What's happening to the pipeline?
We have two sections. We'll call the north half and the south half. The north half of the line, the south half of the line, we have a combination of PVC and ductile iron. We have a particular stretch in there of ductile iron that was actually 12 years older than the 1996 line, because at the point of construction, we knew that line was only 12 years old. Therefore, to meet the grant requirements for that funding, we had to reuse that section of line. So that we have one section that's considerably older than just the 1996 date. We know that. We have PVC line laid through the corrosive soils through the areas where we need the ductile iron laid. So then we have, sections of ductile iron, especially through the Salt Creek oil field there coming into Midwest. The last 6 miles of that line roughly are ductile iron. We have ductile iron in the trouble area as well. So we have a variety of materials through there. It's not just a plastic pipeline that the integrity would be known for several decades.
What we're looking at is all the lines in Edgerton and Midwest and the Salt Creek. We're looking at the big picture of all the lines, not just the service line coming.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
That's the only one you have.
That's correct. Yes, we are consecutive with the Central Wyoming Regional Water System. It's the only water source we have.
We've got a motion from Commissioner Geis and a second from Commissioner Supers. Any further discussion, questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Torrington Water Master Plan.
Mr. Chairman, Torrington is also seeking a master plan based on previous projects. There was a level 1 project conducted in the 1995-96 timeframe for Torrington. You have a brief description of their system. They have a system of wells supplying water with some treatment for those wells, and they are seeking a master plan for their entire water system. And do we have a representative from Torrington? Yes, sir. Come on up, please. Give me your name, please.
Good morning. Tom Troxel, City of Torrington, Water Superintendent.
Any questions of Mr. Troxel or Harry? Commissioner Bud Fallon.
So if your initial master plan was in 95, were the other projects you've done a result of that master plan, or were they?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. As a result of that master plan, a bit of history with Torrington. We were on an administrative order from EPA due to nitrates. As part of that, with your Water Development Commission's help and different funding agencies, we put in a new well field. Has 3 wells and 1 centralized metering station. And then the EPA required us to purchase ROs, which we had. And part of the administrative order was to centrally locate the treatment plant in one building because the ROs before were attached to different wells scattered throughout town. So what we ended up doing is transferring all of our water rights from the wells in town to a centralized well field. It's located at our golf course. There is 3 wells out there. As a result of that, the 3 new wells, well, they're 10 plus years old now, but we have 1 backup well in town. Pretty much the entire focus of that last master plan was on getting a new source and treatment. Nothing was done with regard, since we spent pretty much all of our money on the treatment and the new wells. We wasn't able to replace any of the lines in town. We have a tremendous amount of 4-inch ductile and pit cast lines. And some things have changed since that's happened too. Recently, we added a medium correctional facility, prison, so we're supplying them water. As a part of this level 1 study, if you so choose to pass it, we really need to look at another redundant source of supply somehow, because Torrington's water source is all in one basket, and basically one lightning hit and we're pretty much done.
Any other questions of the sponsor or Harry?
Okay, so you want a study of both a new redundant water supply as well as the existing lines and distribution and all that stuff, right? That's what you
That's
want
what
with
our
your level
hopes are.
one?
That's what our hopes are.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? We have a motion to approve the Torrington Master Plan. Commissioner Geis, a second. Commissioner Wagner. So, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got a Upper Bluff Irrigation Districts Master Plan.
Mr. Chairman, under tab L is the recommendation. Recommendation is to move forward with level one. This is the Bluff and Upper Bluff, separate districts. And I'll defer to Commissioner Geis, who knows the area well, better than I. But these two districts divert their water along at the same diversion structure as Hanover and Hanover and Highland Hanover Irrigation District. And they share that canal for 3 miles. And then at that point, it's pumped to Bluff and Upper Bluff. And so separate irrigation system. We are currently conducting master plan for Hanover and Highland Hanover. But these two districts have also now come forward and would like to do a level one master plan, basically, of their irrigation system. And as the write-up is indicating, they want to look at assess structures in their system and investigate conveyance losses and identify capital improvements for financial planning within their system. My recommendation is to move forward with this study. And we do have representatives from this district, so come on up.
I'm Gary Thrugfight. We have, like you said, two different systems. One, the Upper Bluff is mostly problems with pumping system, whereas the Bluff is mostly all gravity fed, older system that has a lot of structures that are getting old. So that's basically, we need some expertise on what to approach first and how to check out things, I guess. So any questions?
Questions? Commissioner Geis.
New canals that we're talking about. I think it was right in the late 50s or early 60s when the federal government opened up some more BLM land that could be irrigated, and then they developed this project, and that's what the two canals travel. I mean, they cover 15, 20 miles, I guess.
Upper Bluff has roughly 1,500 and close to 1,600 acres. The Bluff has like 3,600 acres.
They were a
federal project. Fallon?
Why didn't we look at this when we were looking at the Hanover and Highland master plan? I mean, it seems to me like there would have been some cost savings and some ease if we would have done all these as a regional review all at once.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Geis, I tried to tell them that when they started.
Did you get an answer?
No. But they need it done.
Harry, any comment on this question?
Well, Mr. Chairman, this setup is a little bit different than the traditional regional supply scenario we look at for municipal water supplies, in that the only shared facilities here are 3 miles of canal. And then at that point, these two districts are separate. And in fact, they are two districts unto themselves. So it's a little different that we're, yes, the source of supply is the same, but different water rights. And so they do function more as independent entities with regards to administering their systems. I am encouraged because at least this application involves two districts. So we're moving from 3 miles of canal, then pumping facilities and going from there. So we are looking at these two districts collectively, but could we have looked at all four together? We could have, but it's a little bit different than a municipal setting where we have kind of made pushed more or regional supplies or regional systems. So that's my only comment.
Harry, do you anticipate that the master plan itself might include some analysis of possible regionalization down the road?
Mr. Chairman, I do not, simply because the assessments on these districts, there's a cost for sharing 3 miles of canal, but beyond that, these two districts are going their separate ways. And so their assessments run primarily or result primarily of the cost of maintaining their smaller canals within their system and the structures. So it's more focused, and it really doesn't lend itself to what I would say a regional or larger irrigation district, or combining those per se.
Any other questions?
One more question. So are there any more districts out there that use the Hanover Canal that we ought to be looking at all at once, or are we done here?
Canal system they used. Like I said, we're only the first 3 miles, and then in the next section there's a 2 canal system on that. There's no more on that system that I know, just the 4 canals.
I have a motion to approve the Upper Bluff Irrigation District's master plan. And who made the motion? Commissioner Guys. Okay, I missed that. So motion by Commissioner Guys, second by Commissioner Little. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Level 2 projects, Bighorn Regional Southern Water Supply, Level 2.
Mr. Chairman, and in that title is Phase 2. And so what we have currently, and if you look at the bottom of page 1 of your recommendation, tab M, Bighorn Regional Southern Water Supply, that is a current Level 2 study that we have ongoing. We expect that we will have certainly a draft report this summer, and maybe even a final report by September 1 of this year. And the current Level 2 is principally to look at alternate water supplies for several districts in and around Thermopolis. They are currently buying water from Thermopolis, and then as the water moves into their system, they pump it into their systems, and they're operating independent systems. At least one of these districts currently has an EPA administrative order dealing with trihalomethanes. It's a disinfection byproduct that in high concentrations can cause cancer. And so it's a regulated constituent by EPA. We expect that there may be another one of these districts that will also then come under an EPA administrative order for the same reasons. Thermopolis, who is producing the water, and they divert water out of the Bighorn River through a surface water treatment plant, and then they distribute that, has not had the high levels of THMs thus far. So, and THMs are, when you chlorinate a water supply, and that chlorine reacts with organic material in the water. The water's been cleaned, but there are still traces of organic material. The chlorine is intended to disinfect. But when that chlorine reacts with organic material, which has a carbon source, one of its byproducts is trihalomethanes. So it's a complicated scenario that as the longer this water is in contact with chlorine, then the THM concentration continues to grow. So you may not have a problem at the Thermopolis water treatment plant, but as you move this water out into your system, there's an aging time, and then it stays in a tank for a period of time, and then the communities pick that water up and pump it into their system. The THM concentration is growing. So that was the genesis, or really the origin of the existing study we have. Now, the existing study, and if you go in your recommendation sheets or to the maps under your recommendation, We're looking at a number of alternatives with regards to the current study. We're looking at really on-site treatment. So can we treat trihalomethanes as the water is moved from the Thermopolis system into the district systems? That's one option that's being evaluated. We are also looking at an alternative supply, and I'm looking at the third map there. The title is South Bighorn Basin Service Area Project Location Map. You see Thermopolis, you see East Thermopolis. There below East Thermopolis, you see Buffalo Creek #2 well. That is an existing well that was drilled by Water Development. It was on the idle well list. And so part of the request that you have in front of you today, again, phase 2 of this level 2 study, would be to go in and redevelop that well, pump test it further, and basically reactivate it because it's been sitting there for 10 plus years. And so that's part of that. But that well would be used as one of the alternatives to supply water to these districts around Thermopolis. In that case, a pipeline is going to have to be built. We're developing, as part of the existing study, those costs. Another alternative that's being developed in the current study is to develop what is called the Lysite Mountain well. And we don't have it identified, but it is a well site that's been previously identified in a Water Development Commission study. And it's located some 22 miles east of Kirby. It would be a Madison well, and part of the current request before you today is to drill that well as part of a level 2 study. And so what I'm saying to you, I think, with regards to my recommendation of do not fund, is we need a commitment from these districts, and John here represents the Bighorn Regional Supply System, as to what alternative they want to do. I would not want to recommend to you that we drill a deep Madison well 22 miles out. We need ultimately 22 miles of pipe if there is not a commitment from these districts that that's the source of water they want. If they in fact elect to go with on-site treatment at their sources, then there's no point to drill this well. And again, I'm concerned about drilling a Madison well or going back into the Buffalo Creek well and redeveloping that unless there's a commitment. We certainly don't want to do both, because the communities only need one water source if we're looking at an alternate source. So I really think this application is premature. And so I would like to finish the existing study, let the districts then look at what the associated costs are going to be, because they're going to share in 1/3 of the costs of any improvements. And if, for example, it's the Buffalo Creek well or #2 well that we're talking about, are they going to be able to take on the additional debt to build that pipeline to bring that water into their respective districts? Don't know at this point in time. I do believe that a couple of those districts are carrying a fair amount of debt load with regards to projects that we have funded for them. So all of that, the economics will enter into the decision making. But again, I think it's premature for this request that wants to redevelop the Buffalo Creek well and drill a Lysite Mountain well. Now, if the ultimate decision is to extend the Bighorn system supply, of which that is John's system that he manages, then I think we need a commitment before we drill what will be a $1 million plus well, that there's a commitment that, yes, we will connect that into the system. There's 22 miles of pipe there, larger diameter pipe. So in round numbers, we're talking about a $20 to $30 million project potentially. And so the existing users in the southern or in the Bighorn system will be taking on debt as a result of that effort. It does give them a southern supply. That's why they're interested in this project. But at the same time, then, we have to extend the southern Bighorn system from about Kirby, or actually Lucerne, into the Thermopolis area. There's a cost associated with that. So it's going to be a very expensive project. And before we just go drilling a new well at 100% of the water development's cost, or redeveloping a well at 100% of the water development's cost, I think there has to be a decision from those local entities that this is the alternative we want to select. And then we can talk about whether we move forward with a level 2 project or whether we can go right to level 3, which again, we can incorporate the well drilling or well redevelopment at that point in time. So I'm not saying this isn't a good project. I'm just saying that I think it's premature. And part of that urgency is being driven by this EPA administrative order on Owl Creek, the district, because they've been determined by EPA as not meeting drinking water standards. They want to rectify that as soon as possible. But I don't think that that means we should invest in multiple alternatives at this point in time. I think an alternative needs to be selected, and then we can move forward. I think there's still time to do that this summer and still bring a level 3 application by September 1, your new deadline. But at this point, that's kind of my position, and that's why I'm recommending that we not move forward with phase 2 at this time. And John here is, of course, representing the district.
Comments, John?
Mr. Chairman, yes. First, I'd like to really thank the staff and you guys for considering this application. As you can tell, Harry's put a lot of work into it and understands it thoroughly, and so does Kevin Boyce, our staff person that's in charge of this. So we understand the effort that goes into these, and we appreciate it. Even though they came up with the wrong decision, we still appreciate it. I kind of wanted to give you an update on what we're doing. As you hear, we are in a level 2 study right now, and it's coming along nicely, and we've gotten a lot of information out of it. Once the recommendation was out, the steering committee did have a meeting and to discuss the recommendation not to fund and where we would go from here. So the parties up there are very involved in this. The turnout for all the meetings has been very good. The input from all the entities is very good. A joint powers board, my understanding was just a few days ago, the Attorney General okayed the application. So steering committee is now turned into a joint powers board. That joint powers board includes East Thermopolis, the town of East Thermopolis, South Thermopolis Rural Water District, Owl Creek Rural Water District, and the Lucerne Service and Improvement District. So, and the Hot Springs County, the county commissioners are very involved in this, and so they are also a member. So it's a 5-member joint powers board. The town is not in that joint powers board formation at this time. The town of Thermopolis has been coming to the meetings. Their engineer is up to speed on the project. The mayor and several of the council people have been to most all the meetings, and they've been putting input into it. At this last meeting, once we had this recommendation, the steering committee, it was a steering committee then a couple of weeks ago, now it's a joint powers board, pretty much determined that Lyside Mountain was where they wanted to go. The numbers that we've gotten, we had a preliminary report from the engineering firm, Dow, that's doing our level 2 study, gave us some very preliminary costs. Their study's not due until July, but and it looks like it's going to be very difficult to develop that well without the population from the town of Thermopolis. So I think everybody there at the meeting pretty much came to the realization that night that if the town is going to be involved and have a new source of water, the project would be viable. If they're not going to be, it's probably too much of a debt load for those outlying districts and the town of East Thermop. And the town is not very interested in the Buffalo Creek well, the existing well, one of your idled wells, but they are interested in the Lyside Mountain location. So I don't know how that's going to work as far as the Joint Powers Board goes, because they had chose not to be part of that. But moving forward, I think the town is going to be become increasingly involved in the the whole discussion about what goes on up there. Their water treatment plant is aging. It's an older plant. You had a good definition or explanation of the trihalomethanes that are being produced there. That's really not the fault of the plant. It's an older plant and they're getting water out of the river, so they've got carbon in their water. That's just the way it goes. So I think the town's much more motivated now than they have been in the past. And I can see a project here that would really benefit a lot of people up there as far as water supply going long into the future. That cost of running a surface treatment plant there for a population of about 3,500 it's expensive. It's just very expensive. And I think this would give them an alternative that might be more feasible. Bighorn Regional is committed to a southern supply, and we just had our board meeting last week. We discussed it pretty thoroughly. If the majority of the benefit is going to be in Hot Springs County, probably the majority of the costs are going to be borne down there. But if it is connected to the Bighorn Regional system, that's downhill from that system, so the water would flow easily into the Lucerne, Kirby, Washakie Rural, and City of Worland. So that system would benefit, and they would be willing to put money into the project.
Do we have an easement into that well on Lyside Mountain?
We don't presently, no. That would be would have been part of this project. I think there were a lot of reasons that we didn't drill there. One of them was the difficulty with the easement. The location for the well is actually on BLM, and there is a BLM route. It's a little bit longer than the deeded ground, but there were a number of other issues. I think the opposition by the town of Thermopolis and kind of a neutral stance by the county commissioners was a big factor in that not being drilled earlier.
Dragging their feet.
I like the ploy you're taking here, Harry, with this this thing. Although John, I like the project. I just think that this type of analyzation, I think, needs to happen more frequently with applications we get from sponsors, all the way down to level ones. Some of this was brought out in some of the interviews we had today, but I do think we need to analyze these things so that we're spending the taxpayers' money wisely. I do think that sometimes when we get asked to do these things and they don't turn out, I do think we should use our statutory ability to seek money back from the sponsor for the study if they decide they don't want to do things. I just think that's in the best benefit to the taxpayers. So I guess I'm glad we're doing this. I'm sorry we couldn't fund everything we do, but I hope in the end that we come up with a project that is either feasible or not feasible.
Any other question, Commissioner?
So if I understood Harry right, the draft level 2 study is going to be mostly done in July, which would then give time for a true true alternative to be selected so that they could make an application in September. Is that the timing?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bud Fallon.
Level 3.
For September, it would be a level 3 application.
Right.
And so Buffalo Creek number 2 well, if that's a selected alternative, they could move right to level 3. With the Lysite Mountain well, that could move to a level 3 project as well. If that's the selected alternative, that's going to be much larger. And I don't know if there's enough time from July to September to really generate the support from your organization, from Thermopolis. So if that's not the case, if that's a selected alternative, then I do think it's appropriate that we take a year to develop that formation. And as as Mr. Geis has indicated, access or easements from the Lysite Mountain Well site into the Bighorn system were a problem last time. So before we drill $1 million well, I would think we want to have that right of way secured. So there's the right of way is secured in level 3. So there's a lot of pieces here, but I'm just concerned about spending a lot of money drilling a well without having all of the answers for the remaining part of the project in place.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm also concerned that if you can't afford this without the town of Thermopolis, I think that Thermopolis needs to decide, are they in or out? Because I would hate to commit to drilling this huge $1 million project and then the town people saying, we don't care, and then lose the project because we don't have a sponsor that can pay anything at all. So I guess I would also be in favor of waiting, see what the level 2 is, see what the town of Thermopolis does, and then make a final decision to spend the tax money on something that we have a much better idea is actually going to go forward.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the director's recommendation of do not fund.
Motion by second by Commissioner Wagner. Any further discussion? Any question? John?
If you'd indulge me for just a minute. Listening to the discussions that the commission's had over the last couple of years, I'd like to point out that when the commission was originally put together by the legislature, the idea was that they were taking mineral severance money, which was an extractive money that comes out of the ground, one-time deal, benefits everybody right now, and leaves the future generations without any benefits from that. And they put a certain amount of money aside so that projects could be built, infrastructure projects that would benefit people generations into the future. And one of the things they identified was a groundwater program that inventories all of the groundwater that we have in the state that's usable for people to use. And I realize that's not a money-making project. It's not even a money-paying back project, but it has great benefits going forward, identifying these drinking water resources that we all have that we're going to be using into the future. And Bighorn Regional is a big beneficiary of that, and all of the people in the Bighorn Basin are benefiting from that program every day when they get their water. So I certainly understand budget cuts. I have my own business. I understand how you've got to balance budgets, but I would like everybody to consider this is money that's coming out of the ground right now, and the future generations aren't going to be able to use it unless you invest it in projects that will last. Thank you very much.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to not fund the Bighorn Regional Southern Water Supply, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Let's talk going forward.
Project is groundwater supply. Buffalo groundwater supply.
Chairman, Buffalo Groundwater Supply Phase 2. It's a level 2 request. And currently we are wrapping up a level 2 study, which was to look at a groundwater supply source for the city or town of Buffalo. Buffalo currently is using surface water. I think some of the commissioners have been on longer term recall. We had a summer trip up to Tyhack Reservoir, which is the principal supply source for the town of Buffalo. But they want to look at an alternative source. That's what the current level 2 study is all about. And that is underway. It's wrapping up. What has come out of the initial results of that study is that, and we looked at an existing well that I think was about 15 miles south of Buffalo. We looked at some alternative drilling of new wells somewhere south of Buffalo. And then another alternative is to look at alluvial water, shallow wells on Clear Creek on the property that's currently houses their water treatment plant. And the city is actually interested now in proceeding ahead with the alluvial supply. So as part of the existing study, there were 6 exploratory wells drilled in and around the Buffalo Water Treatment Plant, so on city-owned property. It was promising, but the recommendation coming out of the level 2 study is that to better quantify that alluvial aquifer, they're recommending another 6 to 8 wells be drilled. And that's what this phase 2 study request is all about. I am recommending do not fund the level 2 study simply because, one, we have information. It shows what the aquifer is all about. We may not have all the information we want before we move to a level 3, but rather than create another level 2 study, drill some additional exploratory wells, my recommendation for the community is that if you want to proceed with this project, then move forward with a level 3 application, September 1st being the earliest opportunity to do so. And so, and then what we would do in a level 3 project is if there was a need to drill an additional or several exploratory wells to better quantify the aquifer, we would do that as part of level 3 and hopefully drill production wells instead of exploratory wells. And there you're drilling shallow wells, and when you hit bedrock below the alluvium, you're done drilling. You have your well. So I think there's an opportunity to really do that as part of level 3 and avoid an additional level 2 study. I have spoken to the city public works director, and he was supportive of that concept. So on that basis, I'm recommending do not fund level 2. Let the community bring a level 3 application.
Anybody from the city of Buffalo? Any questions of Harry?
I'll move we take Gary's recommendation.
Motion by Commissioner
Second.
Cooper and second by Commissioner Little. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion not to fund carries, and we're talking about Hog Island water supply.
Mr. Chairman, Hog Island Improvement and Service District is a fairly new district, was created, I believe, January 2017. We are currently doing a level 1 master plan for this community that does not have a water supply. I mean, it's individual wells, it's hauling of water, but the intent is to create a centralized water system. And so level 1 will be finished this summer, and they are requesting as part of this effort a level 2 study to develop a groundwater well. Okay, that's the normal process in terms of moving forward. That well would be again funded at 100% of water development costs. We are aware of now, and we've given you copies in this recommendation of a petition for dissolution of the district. And as I understand it, there was an initial assessment sent out to landowners within the district. The several members within the district are balking, and whether they were fully informed or did not understand what this water district or this improvement service district was going to do, I don't know. But at this point, this district or this dissolution petition has been filed, and the information I have is that it was signed by 56.8% of the landowners. And that represents 68% of the assessed value within the district. So there is significant opposition to this district moving forward with its plans for a centralized water system. My thoughts to you is that we do not want to invest in a new well paid for 100% by water development without a district on, I'll say, stable ground in place. And so I think we need to let this dissolution process go forward. There's been discussions that if it is dissolved, that there will be a different district is formed with different boundaries. And if that's the case, then that's a different entity. And I think if that new entity is formed, then it is appropriate that they move forward with a level 2 or 3 application for this project, because what we will have at that point in time is a completed master plan. It will be for maybe possibly for the current district, but if that dissolves, that's certainly good, valid work that can be used by a future district in terms of determining costs, determining what the assessments might be going forward. And so I think there's, again, a lot of questions that are unanswered. And as a result, my recommendation to you is to do not fund. We need to let this dissolution process work itself out. Questions?
I know that this is like, this is a crystal ball question, so I guess I'm not even sure why I'm asking it. But I assume if a new district is formed and a year from now, the new district with some minor boundary changes, we're not going to do another master plan, are we? I mean, I guess that's a question for Harry and the state. We're not going to go down that road again, right? And who's going to, I mean, I know the state owns the master plan. I mean, I know that belongs to the state, but we're not going to spend another $150,000 to $200,000 on another master plan.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Seekin, it would be my thoughts that the current master plan underway has real value in determining what's the source of supply, where, what areas can be served. And I would not recommend a new master plan. I spoke with the engineer that's conducting the master plan, and he's already kind of factoring in some of this issue into what other areas could be served. And so I think this master plan has value beyond the current district. So
it's for commissioners long after I'm gone, but we've just been down this road so many times. It's so frustrating. So anyway, that's enough for me right now.
We have some comments from the Hog Island District.
Yes. Hello, my name is Ty Ross. I'm president of Hog Island Improvement and Service District. And I guess first and foremost, we'd like to express our gratitude and appreciation for the consideration and funding by the Water Development Commission and Water Development Office that has benefited, not only our district, but Southern Teton County in general over the last several years. We'd also like to assure the Water Development Office that we remain resolute in our aspiration to eventually provide a central water system to this area. And I also have spoken with the engineer performing the level 1 study, and he's indicated that they're looking, they're considering the factors of this ongoing dissolution, potential dissolution, and, looking forward to what could eventually occur in this area with the willing participants. Aside from that, it is a very real possibility that we may even voluntarily dissolve the district as a board in order to continue moving forward productively, rather than be tied up in 3 or 4 years of legal wrangling with some of these less than happy folks that they're particularly litigious and unreasonable, a few of them, and there's not much we can do about that. So, but we do have a lot of support otherwise, and I don't think just because there's 57% of landowners that signed that petition that is representative of the people who are on board with what we're trying to do. I think there were a lot of untruths told while the dissolution petition was being circulated, including our likelihood of developing groundwater. There was talk of even us having to pump out of the river and put in a $50 million treatment facility. And, if that were the case, we wouldn't be moving forward anyway. So, but regardless, I think we plan to overcome the current issues, and we will have a district in some form come September, or for the next level 2 application period.
Thank you. Any other Questions of the sponsor or Harry?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
move
Commissioner
to
Wagner.
Accept the director's recommendation.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Wagner and second by Commissioner Cooper. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Commissioner Bud Fallon got her hand up there.
I just want to make sure though that the current study is going to be completed, because even if the district gets reorganized or rearranged, I think that our current study is valid and can provide good information for whatever this looks like when you're done. So by refusing to fund this one, I do want to see the results of our first study, and then we can go forward with whatever it looks like after that.
So we've been told that they will. To date, everything is positive, other than a few of our constituents.
Other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Sounds like you have some work to do, so.
We'll get on it. Thank you.
Item is the Sundance West water supply. Oh, it's been withdrawn.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, it has been withdrawn, but just to give you a little background, if you're curious, this initially started out with an application from the Sundance West Homeowners Association. And then during the evaluation process since March 1, the town submitted a substitute application where the town was sponsoring the application. And so when we looked at it, ultimately what I concluded and the staff evaluation was that the Sundance West subdivision is a subdivision kind of on the north and east side of the community. It is not part of the city. It's outside of the corporate boundaries. However, it's been developed in two phases. Phase 1 has about 56 lots. They're smaller lots, and they currently receive city water, but they've never been annexed. And in fact, we have a level 3 project now ongoing, which will increase storage capacity for phase 1, as well as increase the pump capacity to better provide water service in that area. Phase 2 is a same subdivision, but it is much larger lots. And in counting then, there were 18 lots in phase 2. 14 of those are vacant. 4 have houses, and I think 2 of them, I may have this wrong, but 1 was hauling water. 2 or 3 of them have drilled wells, and there's poor water quality. And so their request then was to look at a level 2 feasibility study to build a water system for them and bring them into the community. When we looked at it, what is really needed, in my opinion, is we're talking about distribution system piping to deliver water to 18 lots, 14 of them vacant. And because it's distribution piping, which is not eligible in our program, and because it is largely vacant land at this point in time, my conversations with the town and homeowners association representatives was that I was going to recommend no. And so as a result, they've withdrawn their applications. I think there's the answers they were after in terms of what would a distribution system cost, what's the best way to provide water to these 18 lots, I think can be acquired by either the homeowners or the town retaining an engineer and having them specifically answer those questions for them. So for that reason, it was withdrawn.
Thank you, Harry. We're going to go on to level 2 projects rehab, Boulder Irrigation District rehabilitation.
So, Mr. Chairman, this district's located in Sublette County. Level 2 request, so feasibility work, and 2 main issues that they want to assess: the condition of 1, the spillway on their dam, and then 2, look at alternatives for improving efficiency with regards to their canals. So my recommendation is to move forward with this study. And we do have a representative. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Joe Gillis, Boulder Irrigation District Commissioner.
Comments, Mr.
We're looking to update and rehab our canal and our spillway. Conveyance loss in Boulder, Wyoming, because of the aggregate and the sandy soils, is approximately 40%. The water travels approximately 13 miles down our main canal, and we're looking to address main conveyance loss areas. As a result of this, it's taken some acreage out of production, hay production, and we could use, if we were to do some rehabilitation on that main canal, we could apply water to other places that seem to be a little bit drier, and production is lost there as well.
Any other questions of Harry or response? Go ahead.
I don't know if I'm on the right line here, but it looks like $3.50 an acre is your assessment.
Per acre owned. So for example, if you owned 100 acres, you would pay $3.50 per acre for the delivery of water. And then another $50 goes to the county assessor's office of Sublette County.
Any other questions of the sponsor or Harry? All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Lancaster.
Second it.
And Commissioner Bud Fallon seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Now, my follow on the next one is apparently, according to the audience introductions, I've been mispronouncing Laprelle for 66 years. I heard another pronunciation this morning. So can we go ahead with Laprelle Irrigation District Rehabilitation Project?
Mr. Chairman, the recommendation that you have for me was to proceed with level 2, and I want to walk back from that a little bit and have a discussion with you. We currently have a master plan underway. That the results from that master plan are not available. It'll be completed hopefully in the next year or so. It might be shorter than that, but the concept is you do a master plan, it identifies issues, and then you may focus on one of those issues with regards to a level 2 feasibility study if it's warranted, or you can move from level 1 right to a level 3. So we didn't have that information when this original recommendation was drafted. We've since, talking with the consultant, there's really 3 main issues that are coming forward with regards to Laprelle Irrigation District. The first one is their main diversion structure called the East Main Diversion and Headgate. And my thoughts to you and to the district is that that's a project that we could move right to level 3. Would we want the consultant to look at what options are available for that diversion structure? What is the best type, gate configuration, whatever? I think those can all be handled as part of a level 3 application. Another issue is that they have a weed and moss problem in their canal system. My thoughts to you are that's an operation and maintenance issue and not really suitable for a feasibility study. And then we get to the third item, and Chase, you have some pictures? You want to pass those out, please? Then we have an issue with regards to some fairly large fractured rock formations below the dam that are causing a large amount of concern. If they should fall, at least a couple of them, if they should break away, it appears that there's a real likelihood that they could strike the dam and cause significant damage. And so initially, this is kind of, I think, a new area for the commission, because is that a maintenance function in terms of you have a dam, and thanks, Chase. You've got pictures. And possibly you could consider that. It really kind of moves us away from water issues to rock mechanics in terms of how do you deal with these rock faces that may fracture and fall off. But if it does, if any of these fall off and strike the dam and create damage, then I think that's most definitely an item that would come before you in terms of the rehabilitation or reconstruction of the dam. So I think at this point in time, and the sponsors are here, I want to have a discussion of the issues mainly focused on these rock faces, and whether we might want to proceed with a level 2 study focused specifically on how to manage these structures. Are they a threat? What is their status? And then how we might mitigate that, because certainly the conventional way you might mitigate a rock structure like this would drill and blast. But if drill and blast is going to cause it to roll into the dam, how do we handle that? So I think that particular issue does maybe warrant the feasibility study going forward. I'm not sure it's necessary to incorporate the diversion dam and moss and weed issues. So with that, I'll turn it over to the sponsor for discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Colt Rodeman, President of the Laparelle Irrigation District. I thank you, Commissioners, for the funding of our level 1 study that's underway right now. As you can see before you, starting on the first page, the top photograph, that's in 1909 of how the west side rock face looked. You can see it's pretty sheer and everything. The next one below that's later in the 70s. You can see on the west side that pile of debris. They dug that out from underneath the dam because the dam was leaking, would not hold water. So they had to go in and excavate all that, seal the bottom of the dam. That's where this material came from. And in doing so, they worked away some of that wall. Also in the 70s, we rehabbed the face of the dam and it used to spill over the top of the dam on the west side. And in the late 70s, early 80s, they drilled through the side of the canyon wall to put in the spillway for that. And in the second page, your rock number 4, that was the end of our spillway. 2 years ago, we had a extensive rain on top of a lot of good snow. It filled our dam was already full at the time, and all that excess water that came through blowed the end of that off. There was that much water coming through our spillway at that time. In our level 1 that we've been doing, I have been through the spillway looking on the inside of that with the engineers and everything else. That's when I started asking myself, this isn't looking good, because on the sides you can see how it's the formation of the rock wall at the end of the spillway is cracking. You look underneath on page 2, you can see how the line directions. But if you also look under the rock number 3 and rock number 2, the stuff that fell away during that flood 2 years ago. And it's very unstable. It's pretty rubbleized. We, as a board, this spring, we were wanting to go in and move the debris field into our dam to cushion our dam. We were going to take that project on ourselves However, with talking with the consultants that were, and the engineers doing the level 1 study, they said, they raised the question of the vibration of the machinery going in there to work on that because of how these rocks are hanging, especially rock number 3. So we backed off of that. They also suggested some monitoring equipment, which we will put into place to see if there's stuff that is moving. Also on the east side, we have a large overhanging rock that we'd like to monitor it at the same time. However, we feel that this may be categorized as maintenance. If these rocks are to fall before we can get anything done, it's into our dam and it'll probably shut us down. So that's why we would like to see this portion of this go into level 2. If there's any other questions.
Any questions for Commissioner Lancaster?
What would be the, what's downstream that will be affected if this breaks?
If the rocks break,
Yeah, if you lose a few of those rocks, it looks like that west side could go with it. What would happen downstream of this
downstream you
storm?
have Interstate I-25, the town of Douglas, Glendo Dam. If it's if a large event was to happen, we feel that, we don't know what these rocks are going to do. What's it going to take? If they fall, what's going to go with it? They are essentially rocks 3 and 2 are on the back side of our spillway. Rock 1 is hanging on the side, and you can see that it's pretty well detached on the wall. It's just hanging there, and it's not going to affect our spillway, but it could hit the open part of our dam, and that would cause instability of the dam.
Any other questions? Commissioner Wagner.
Mr. Rodeman, are you thinking that worst scenario, if one of those rocks breaks loose and knocks a hole in your dam, you could lose the whole dam?
Worst case scenario, yes. Yes, sir.
Douglas?
It wouldn't take it out, but it would make the fairgrounds awful wet. The lowlands. The main problem would hit Orange Junction. All those houses along in there would be totally flooded.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the director's recommendation?
Also move.
Commissioner Suker, second by Commissioner Wagner. Any further discussion?
A quick question. Is this, Jason, is this being like a dams and safety issue because of this, or is this really something that's separate? I guess I'm trying to figure out how these two things merge with, like rehabilitation of dams. Where's that fine line of where it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Seekin, I made a note here that just a question, is there a safety of dams issue? And I think in looking at these rock formations, I think it's appropriate that we do move forward with that level 2 feasibility for that aspect of the project. Because again, as I said earlier, if it damages the dam, that would be one approach. Let them fall off the side of the mountain. Is that 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now? Don't know. But then you deal with the damage that results. Or are there some methods available to either secure or remove them and do that in a controlled fashion where you limit damages to the dam. So I think that's an appropriate topic for a feasibility study.
Further discussion? All those in favor of motion to approve the director's recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
We have a timeout.
Well, I was just gonna say, since I'm older than Sheridan Little, I'm declaring a 10-minute break. We'll come back. We've been going 2 hours and 10 minutes. Come back in 10 minutes at 10:50. I understand we're just going to go project by project and have commissioners make the appropriate motion. So unless somebody tells me it's different than that, we'd start with the Bedford Water Supply Master Plan Level 1. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I, Nick Bettis, move the director to be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Bedford Master Plan Level 1 project in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Sunrise Engineering. Number 2, Rendezvous Engineering. Number 3, Forsgren and Associates. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the negotiations. Negotiate a reasonable cost reduction to tasks 3, 4, and 6 relative to the sponsor's recent expenditures on GIS, the hydraulic model, and the leak detection systems of losses, respectively. I might point out that these 3 firms did a great job. It is as good a presentation as I think we've had 3 firms do. And I also believe the suggestions are going to result in additional cost savings based on the bid that the number one consultant firm got. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bettis. We have a motion on the selection of the consultant. Do we have a second?
I have a second.
Second by Commissioner Lancaster. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We move to the Big Laramie River Oasis Ditch Diversion Rehab.
Mr. Chairman, you got ahead of me, or you jumped out in front of me. I'm falling behind the new chairman. The memo I just passed out deals with one of the statutory requirements that you're required to consider when hiring consultants, and that is equitable distribution of work. And just a tabulation from the results of the recommendation committees were that 16 firms received a recommendation for 1 project, and there were 3 firms that were recommended for 2 projects. One of those was Sunrise. And just as a rule of thumb, what we've used in the past is if a firm was selected for 3 projects, then you might consider distributing that work to other firms. And I don't believe that's the case now. You know, again, 3 firms with two jobs recommended anyways. So my recommendation is that you do not need to consider the equitable distribution any further. You may, certainly, for those 3 firms that are recommended for 2 projects, but certainly it hasn't met the standard we've used in the past.
Thank you, sir. Good ahead of you. And I think we'll all appreciate the volume report, project volume report that you give as part of that selection. Any further discussion? Well, no, we're moving on to Big Laramie River Oasis Ditch Diversion.
Mr. Chairman. I, Karen Bud Fallon, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Big Laramie River Oasis Ditch Diversion Level 2 project in accordance with the following rankings of the firms interviewed. 1, SCH, 2, WWC Engineering, 3, Anderson Consulting Engineers, Inc. There are no scope alterations.
Motion by Commissioner Doug Fallon. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Weidman. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We move on to the Big Sandy Watershed Study Level 1. Have a motion. Commissioner Bettis?
Which one?
Big Sandy. I know one. That's your name on
it. Sorry. I, Nick Bettis, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Big Sandy Watershed Study project in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Rio Verde. Number 2, Confluence. Number 3, Biota. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the negotiations. that we accept the scope alternative of additional mapping tasks, but without the additional $400 cost.
Thank you for the motion, Commissioner Bettis. Is there a second? Commissioner Geis, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those nay. Motion passes, which takes us to Cheyenne Municipal Storage Phase 1 Level 2. Do we have a motion? Nice.
Mr. Chairman, before that happens, Harry, could you, is this the one that you should bring up a letter that maybe not all commissioners received because of timing?
Commissioner Seekin, there has been delivered to members of the commission. We received it here in this office May 14th, and it is from Brenda Johnson representing the Willardson Ranch, which is in the Laramie Range. And this is not the first letter we have received from her, but she remains steadfast in a position that they do not want to see any reservoirs built on the Willardson Ranch. Way back 2005 or so, there was a kind of a master planning effort done by the city of Cheyenne to look at other potential reservoir sites. And one of them was identified on the Willardson Ranch. And apparently in that process, the Willardsons were not aware that their ranch was being looked at for a reservoir. And so that kind of started off this large concern that, one, you're not going to build a reservoir on this ranch, but two, we want to stay informed. And so as we move forward with this feasibility study, what I will tell you is the primary focus is enlarging existing structures. But as part of that process, there is an analysis of what are the alternatives. And alternatives do involve potentially new reservoir sites. However, with this letter, which will make part of the record, and we'll certainly share this with the selected consultant, this represents a fatal flaw for any reservoir site being considered on their lands. Now, that's not to say there may not be a contact made in that context, but I think they've been clear, certainly for the last 10 plus years, we do not want our ranch considered for a reservoir site. And so we have to obviously respect that as we move forward with this study. But Cheyenne certainly is in the need to look at developing additional storage for its system. And there may be the potential for looking at other sites, but the primary focus will be enlarging existing facilities.
Just say that having been involved in that at the time, as Harry described, it was not a high point for the Board of Public Utilities, and I'm quite sure they will not be looking at that ranch for expansion. Any other discussion? Commissioner Lancaster?
No, I have.
I'm sorry, I got ahead of it. Yeah, go ahead.
I, Gerald Geis, moves the director to be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Cheyenne Municipal Storage Level 2 Phase 1 study in accordance with the following rankings of the firms interviewed. Number 1 was Tri-Hydro. Number 2 was HDR. Number 3 was ENCO, and they were all very close.
We have a second.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Guy, second by Commissioner Seekin. Commissioner Lancaster? Discussion?
Yes. So was this ranch included in the scope of the study? And do we need to deduct since they don't want us to come onto their property? And
Well, Mr. Chairman, at this point, the scope is to look at the enlargements and look at alternatives. So that will involve new sites. We will share this letter with the consultant, which then says there's no need to consider any sites on this ranch further because there's a fatal flaw here. But I don't know that we need to specifically state that in the scope of services. This is information that will be provided to the consultant as we go forward.
thank you.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion carries, which takes us to the Green River Rock Springs, et cetera, pump station and transmission.
I get to say et cetera.
You do.
All right. I, Karen Bud Fallon, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Green River, Rock Springs, Sweetwater County Joint Powers Water Board Pump Station and Transmission Level 2 study in accordance with the following rankings of the firms interviewed. 1, Sunrise Engineering. 2, Keller Associates. 3, Forsgren Associates. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the negotiations. Number 1, negotiate a cost for the aerial survey only as a scope alteration. They'd offered 2 scope alternates, and we are only selecting the aerial survey.
Motion by Commissioner Bud Fallon, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Seeker. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has it, and we move to the Hanover Irrigation District Bighorn Flume Replacement Project. And that's
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Seekin.
I, Jeanette Seekin, move the director to be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Hanover Irrigation District Bighorn Flume Replacement Level 2 study in accordance with the following ranking of the firms. Inkberg Miller Engineers. There was only one applicant.
One.
Motion by Commissioner Seekin, is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Geis. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Horse Creek Watershed Study, Commissioner Wagner.
Mr. Chairman, I, Rod Wagner, move that the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services for a Horse Creek Watershed Study project in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed.
Anderson Consulting, number 1. Number 2, Adaptive Resources Incorporated. Number 3, Olson. And I might add that all 3 did an outstanding job.
Presentation, and thank you to them.
Motion by Commissioner Wagner, second.
Aye.
Second by Commissioner Stuker. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next is the Lander Test Well Study. Commissioner Suker.
Mr. Chairman, I, Larry Suker, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Lander Test Well Level 2 project in accordance with the following rankings of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Wyoming Groundwater. Number 2, Wink Associates. Number 3, Weston Engineering. Optional. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the negotiations. 1, negotiate with the consultant to add a task to phase 1 with no increase in cost. Task 2, definition of water supply objectives, and that would be a new task.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Suker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Geis. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. And that moves us on to the Little Snake River Valley Municipal Water Supply. Commissioner Bud Fallon.
I, Karen Bud Fallon, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Little Snake River Valley Water Supply Level 2 project in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Wank Associates. 2, Western Engineering and Geologists. 3, Engineering Associates. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the negotiations. Accept the scope alternative to update the existing BAGS GIS to reflect the 2018 as-built drawings. Create a Dixon GIS reflective of 2018 conditions, and to work with the towns of Dixon and Baggs in maintenance requirements of the GIS by providing a one-day training course for the town's operators, clerks, and other pertinent staff.
Motion by Commissioner Fallon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Geis. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes, which takes us to the Lower Laramie River Watershed Study. Commissioner Seacon.
I, Jeanette Seacon, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Lower Laramie Watershed Level 1 study in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Anderson Consulting Engineers. Number 2, Golder Associates.
Motion by Commissioner Seacon. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Commissioner Suker. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That takes us to the Middle Bighorn River Watershed study. Commissioner Geis.
I, Gerald Geis, move director to be instructed to begin negotiation for consulting services on the Middle Bighorn River Watershed Study in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Y2 Consultants was number 1. Woodrow and Coram, number 2. Number 3, and that could have gone any way you wanted to go, but that's the way it went. Options was further selection committee offered the following suggestions to the director during negotiations. Incorporate the proposed scope alternatives regarding the Lower Hanover Canal into the contract using discretionary funds provided in the purpose of the budget. Integrate a possible scoping alternative on climate science in the scope and work with the funding being absorbed with other proposed task budgets. Amen.
Motion by Commissioner Geis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wagner. Any discussion?
Question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries, which takes us to the Osage Water Master Plan. And that is Commissioner Suker.
Mr. Chair. I, Larry Suker, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consultant services on the Osage Water Master Plan Level 1 study in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Jorgensen Associates. Number 2, James Gore and Associates. And number 3, Dowell. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the negotiations. Number 1, accept scope alteration in the amount of $5,000 to hydrovac and locate valves.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Suker and second by Commissioner Little. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries, which takes us to the Paposia Watershed Study. Commissioner Geis.
I, Gerald Geis, move the director to be instructed to begin negotiation for consulting services on the Paposia River or Paposia Watershed Study Phase 2 project in accordance with the following ranking of the firms. Olson Associates was number 1. Right Consulting Group number 2. Golder Associates number 3. And they were all very top-notch firms that applied for this job.
Motion by Commissioner Geis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wagner. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Now we're on the River Basin Planning GIS Data Model Implementation Project. Commissioner Lancaster.
Mr. Chairman, I, Kellen Lancaster, move the director to be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the GIS data model implementation level 1 project in accordance with the following ranking of firms interviewed. Number 1, Confluence Consulting Incorporated. Number 2, GDA. And number 3, Ecology and Environment Incorporated. Inc. Sorry.
Motion by Commissioner Lancaster, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Suker. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. That moves us to the River Basin Planning Water Supply Index project. Commissioner Wagner.
I, Rod Wagner, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Water Supply Index Level 1 study in accordance with the following ranking of firms interviewed. Number 1, West Environmental Statistic Consultants. 2, GDA, and 3, WWDC Engineering. Thank you to those firms.
Motion by Commissioner Wagner, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Geis. Any discussion?
Question.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes, which takes us to the Saratoga Water Master Plan. Commissioner Bud Fallon.
I, Karen Bud Fallon, move the director to be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Saratoga Master Plan Level 1 project in accordance with the ranking of the following firms interviewed. 1, Forsgren Associates. 2, WLC. 3, North Fork Engineering.
Motion by Commissioner Bud Fallon, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Geis. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That project passes, which takes us to the Sheridan Municipal Watershed Wildfire Hazard Mitigation Study, and I think that's Commissioner Suker.
Hi, Larry Suker. I, Sheridan Little, move the director to be instructed to begin negotiations for consulting services on the Sheridan Municipal Wildfire Hazard Mitigation Assessment Level 1 study in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Anchor Point. Number 2, SWCA. Number 3, Y2 Consultants. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the negotiations. Accept the scope alteration of extending the fire behavior model to include the Kentucky 10 watersheds of Fool Creek and South Piney Creek at no additional cost.
Motion by Commissioner Little, second.
Second.
Commissioner Wagner, seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Project passes, takes us to the Sheridan Water Master Plan. Commissioner Suker.
Mr. Chairman, I, Larry Suker, move the director be instructed to begin negotiation for consultant services on the Sheridan Water Master Plan in accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Dowell. Number 2, Intech. Number 3, Woodard and Kern. Optional. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the negotiations. Number 1, integrate Dowell's proposed no-cost alternatives into the contract scope of work.
Motion by Commissioner Suker, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Little. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Wait, I got discussion. I just noticed here, this project here, compared with your do not fund recommendation on a portion of the Sheridan water area thing, how does this interface, or does it interface with that? Didn't you just find out?
That's why I couldn't figure it out.
I'm sorry.
You're close. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Okay, I'll do this one since I.
Our next project, Silver Lake Dam, Commissioner Bettis.
Nick Bettis moved the director of construction and negotiation health services on Silver Lake Dam Rehabilitation Project. In accordance with the following ranking of the firms interviewed. Number 1, Rio Verde Engineering. Number 2, SEA. Number 3, Gold. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during negotiation. Revise the cost itemization to include the costs associated with the additional overall cost of the project due to its location and the limitations which will be imposed by the Forest Service. In other words, what we're saying here is that because of its location and what needs to happen, we talked to the consultants about it, and they agreed to do all this. I think this is one of the more interesting projects that I've seen come to this office, and I'm curious to see how it's going to come out. I think it's important that we do this study, although I think what's more important than that is the outcome, to see what happens, because I think it's the sponsors' intentions to rehabilitate this thing. But should that not happen, then I think there's some interesting things that could happen. I think up to and including having the sponsor reimburse the state for this cost. But it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I think it's really going to be an interesting study, and I'm kind of sad I'm not going to be there.
Motion and discussion by Commissioner Bettis, and we've had a second by Commissioner Suker. Is there any, Katie, did you have?
I wasn't talking loud enough. Yeah, I got it right here.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, that takes us through the consultant selection, and thanks to all the consultants and everybody who participates in that week-long project. We've got some progress reports now. Brian is up. Boulder Flats water supply. Why don't you just take us through these, Brian, or whoever is going to report?
Mr. Chairman, the first project under tab S is the Boulder Flats water supply project. This project is advanced to the construction phase. If you notice, under the construction phase, there's 2 projects listed. The first project was the drilling of the well that was completed awarded back in September of 2015. The second project is to connect the well, set the pump and construct a well house. That project had a bid opening on March 8th of this year. 4 bids were received. Barnhoff Construction was a low bidder. The low bid came in at $748,015. Engineer's estimate was $610,000.
Questions on the Boulder Flats water supply construction progress report? All right, let's go to Buffalo Main Street Pipeline.
Next project is the Buffalo Main Street Pipeline project. This project is a construction of a transmission pipeline. This project also has moved to the construction phase. Bid opening on December 21st. 8 bids were received. The range of bids was $150,000 to $336,000. Engineer's estimate was $153,985. The low bid was $150,685.50. And again, that low bidder was Barnum Construction out of Buffalo.
Any questions? All right, let's move to the Buffalo Tank Valve project.
This project is the Buffalo Tank Valve project. This project involves a tank control valve. The project manager is Keenan Hendon. The project is advanced to the construction phase with a December 21st, 2017 bid opening. We received 8 bids. The range of bids varied from $49,000 to $93,000. The low bid was $49,429.65. The engineer's estimate was $87,175, and Barnum Construction out of Buffalo was the low bidder.
Brian, are you comfortable with that bid there? That's almost 20%.
I questioned the project manager on that. Barnum is a small contractor out of Buffalo, Wyoming. Again, there was the range of bids was 49 to 93. The engineer's estimate was 87. So this particular contractor has done a lot of work with the city of Buffalo. The city of Buffalo was familiar with his work and comfortable with awarding the project to him.
Let me just say, I really appreciate these construction progress reports, construction closeout reports. That keeps us tied to these projects we approve. But anyway, Cowley Tank.
This project is the Cowley Tank 2017 project. The project manager is Ken Mitchell. This project is advanced to the design phase. Morrison Merrily has been hired to do the construction design and construction management. The total fee is $667,975.
Questions on the Cowley Tank? Manville Well construction.
Next project is the Manville Well Connection Project. Ken Mitchell is the project manager. This project is advanced to the project closeout stage. Total project cost was $403,363.79. WWDC share was $268,521.69. We reverted $59,778.31 back into account one.
Questions for Brett? Northwest Rural Water System Improvements.
This project is the Northwest Rural Water System Improvements 2018 project. The project manager is Keenan Hinden. This project is also advanced to the design phase. Dow Engineering was hired to do the design of the project for $221,175. Upon completion of the design phase, they'll do an amendment to their agreement to do construction management services. The Rock River Transmission Line Replacement Project is managed by Chris Chabron. This project is advanced to the project closeout phase. The project final cost was $1,602,793.08. Our portion of the project is $1,073,871.37. We had a reverting back into account to $85,228.63.
Questions? We'll move on to the Shoshone Transmission Pipeline.
And the Shoshone Transmission Pipeline 2016 project, this is the project is managed by Keenan Hinden. This project is advanced to the construction phase. We had a bid opening on August 9th of last year. We get this late, this information a little bit late. We had two bidders on this particular project. The low bidder came in at $3.95 million. It was substantially below the engineer's estimate of $4.8 million. The concern, there was discussions with the owner and the engineer with the contractor, and it became apparent the contractor had failed to include a cement lining. This was 7,000 feet of 16-inch steel transmission pipe. And so in his bid, he didn't include the cement lining in the steel pipe as part of his bid. So his bid was rejected, and the next lowest bid was awarded the project, and that award was for $4.4 million and some change.
One more.
One more. I'm sorry. Thermopolis. Okay.
The last project is Thermopolis Pipeline 2017 project. This project is advanced to the construction phase. We had a bid opening on January 25th, 2018. We had received 5 bids as part of that bid opening. The range in bids varied from $2.1 million to $2.78 million. Engineer's estimate was $2.27 million. Contract award was to Wilson Brothers. The contract amount was for $2,127,702.89.
Questions? Go ahead.
Does that take that in? Some of it goes into the state park and all that stuff.
Oh, I believe this is all pipeline in town. I think
but when they were looking at it, they included some going into the state park on the same bid. I thought. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm not familiar with that. I think that my recollection of the project was, and they were going to cross the river on the northeast side of town. Is that the same area that you're describing? Okay.
Spring State Park is right there.
Okay.
Some of that in the park be a lot cheaper for the state stuff to do it, but I might be wrong. I did about that 3 or 4 different times. Could have been included in there.
Maybe Mr. Herndon can get back to Commissioner Gass. All right, thank you, Brian. Unless there's any other questions. We'll move on to proposed Chapter 8 rules. Aye, did we? Don't think so.
Tab T.
On
Number
my,
15.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, proposed chapter 8 rules.
doesn't have anything.
We don't have a,
I skipped it. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, Chapter 8 rules, which were approved by the commission for, move forward as promulgations. That was at your January meeting. And the process that goes from there is this statement of principal reasons is prepared and submitted to the governor's office along with the proposed rules. And that was approved by the governor's office, which then led us to the public advertising.
I had to clear it out in here.
And a copy of that advertisement is in the packet I just handed out. And you can see that it was, look at the dates here. The comment period ended on May 14th. I don't see the initial. March 26th was the first publication and then ran April 9th. And again, as I mentioned earlier, then we received no public comments. Comments were received or available to be received in 2 forms: electronic comments through our website, where the rules were posted, and then again, written comments would be expected or accepted as well. And neither of those sources garnered any comments. You have in the packet then the rules as will be added. And so the first page is the revised table of contents. And so you see Chapter 8 delegation of duties added. And then the next 4 pages are the actual rule itself, which again, you reviewed at your January meeting. There were 3 or 4 revisions at the January meeting that were then incorporated into this set of rules going forward. And so the next step is for the commission to consider public comments and then decide if you want to revise the rules in any way before you approve them and recommend them for final approval by the governor and the management council of the legislature. So I would stand for any questions.
Questions of Harry?
I would move for the adoption of these rules. These are all, I mean, we already discussed this to death in January, and since there are no public comments, I would move that we approve the publication of these rules.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Bud Fallon, second by Commissioner Suker. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes, and we have 4 topics for discussion, starting with a review of survey questions for the Gillette area water districts.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it was at the January meeting, we had discussed a survey of districts in and around Gillette that might be ultimately connecting to the district. Brian has developed the questions, and so you wanted to review those questions, so take this time to just walk quickly through those. And those are found under tab T.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, under tab T, we put together a draft survey questions to go out to the Gillette districts who have not submitted an application for level 3 construction projects. So that's approximately, I believe that's about 18 districts that who have not applied it to this to date. So real briefly, the first paragraph is just an introduction outlining the purpose of the survey. And again, the purpose is to find out if and when a district is coming to the commission with a level 1 or level 2 study application, and also to find out when that district might connect to the regional water system. The second paragraph is just kind of some background information indicating that the regional water system is anticipated to start delivering water at the end of this year, and that currently we have 8 districts that are connected to the regional water system, and we anticipate 10 more connecting in the near future. So I'll just run through the survey questions real quickly. Question 1 deals with entity. Is your entity a legally formed water district, joint powers board, improvement and service district, or water or sewer district? And the answer is either yes or no. So moving to question 2, then if has your entity signed a water surface agreement with the city of Gillette to receive water from the regional water system? Circle yes or no. If you circle yes, then you've advanced to question 4. If you circle no, the question on question 3 is when is your entity considering signing a city of Gillette water service agreement? Following question 3, then they would move on to question 4. When does your entity anticipate connecting to the city of Gillette regional water system? Provide the year. Moving on to question 5, then, has your entity coordinated with the city of Gillette regarding when your entity wants to connect to the city of Gillette regional water system? So here, if that answer is no, we're asking or directing the district to get a hold of the city of Gillette. We provided a name and number of Levi Jensen, who's the project manager for the regional water system, to discuss with the city of Gillette and coordinate with the city of Gillette about connecting to the system. Moving on to question 6, is your entity currently experiencing water supply, delivery, low pressure, water quality, or other issues? Circle 1, either yes or no. If you don't have any issues or with your system, then you move on to question 8. Otherwise, under question 7, you provide a brief description of your water entity's system issues that was identified in question 6. Moving on to question 8, in the next 5 years, does your entity intend to apply to the WWDC for a level 1 reconnaissance or level 2 feasibility study to evaluate the entity's water system? And then we have a note here that please be advised that completed WWDC level 1 or level 2 study is not required for your entity to connect to the city of Gillette regional water supply system. And then we go on to say that be further advised that an entity is generally required to be a legally formed entity to pursue a level 1 or level 2 study in the Wyoming Water Development Program. On a case-by-case basis, the WWDC may waive the entity formation requirement for level 1 study applications. So here then the answer, they can either answer yes or no to a level 1 study or yes or no to a level 2 study. If they answer the question 8 is no, then they've completed the survey. Otherwise, in question 9, we're asking the entity to indicate the year that they would apply for a level 1 or a level 2 study. Let's stand for any questions.
Any questions for Brian?
Maybe it's not a question, but it is a comment. I wonder how many of these we funded that are using the Madison water supply as a backup to their system. Because when I look at it, in some cases, there's an awful lot of cost that goes to putting a valve at the point of a reserve water supply in case theirs fails or they run out of water during certain times of the year. I don't know if that's in your questionnaire here, but if there's a way to incorporate that, we may be surprised what we get back. Or maybe we could add it to the survey that it asked that question: how many entities would or are seeking backup supply? I know there's a lot of areas around the Gillette area that have better water, of course, than the Madison. And they'll use the city water to either blend. But what I'm saying, it's an awful expense for us to use water as a backup, not a total 100% source. We put the money in, they don't use the water. It's what I'm saying.
Chairman, yes, we can add an additional question with regard to the level of service that they anticipate signing up for.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian? All right, I guess you've got your direction. Next matter of discussion is status of the Pathfinder proposal on the Platte River Recovery Program.
Mr. Chairman, as I think you were aware, really starting last fall, the discussion has been the reauthorization or extension of the first increment of the Platte River Recovery and Implementation Program. There was a water supply project for the recovery program called the Pathfinder Proposal that was being discussed. In fact, I conducted, with Katie's assistance, 3 meetings in Torrington, Casper, and Saratoga. The governor, all of that information was provided to the governor's office, and ultimately the decision by Wyoming is to not authorize or support the Pathfinder proposal. And so the letter that's attached in under tab U is my letter to governance committee members, along with the number of irrigation districts that would have been part of that Pathfinder proposal project. I tried to cover everybody to let them know what the state of Wyoming's position was. And that position is, number one, we definitely support the extension of the first increment. That's important to Wyoming. 2, we do not support the Pathfinder proposal. Felt it was not justified, that there's a need to take additional Wyoming water for that program. And thirdly, then, as a fallback, that if that Pathfinder proposal is ultimately considered in the future, that it be with protections for the above Pathfinder water users, i.e. the Saratoga area, which they were very concerned that taking additional water out of Pathfinder may lead to an additional call for regulation. So that is the position of Wyoming. The draft legislation has been modified. It has not yet been sent to our congressional delegation, but I'm working with Nebraska and Colorado to coordinate that effort. So that really is the conclusion of that effort moving forward. So we're seeking strictly an extension of the program going forward, and I would be happy to address any questions.
Questions of Harry?
So for your information, that's where we're going.
I will move on then to negotiations for Lake DeSmet water assets.
Mr. Chairman, I do not have anything that's concrete or documents to present to you today, but I do want to inform you that Daniel and myself, as well as Jason Mead, have had some meetings with representatives of Sasol. We are moving forward with a purchase agreement. It's in draft form right now, and we hope to have it refined here in the next couple of weeks. It's a fairly voluminous document. And so the schedule that we have discussed with the seller or the seller's representatives would bring that purchase agreement to the commission at your June meeting. And recall that the legislation that authorizes this purchase has 3 kind of steps. 1, the Water Development Office will negotiate the purchase agreement. That's what we're doing right now. 2, the commission must approve that. So again, tentatively at your June meeting. And thirdly, then the governor must approve that document as well. So that's the schedule we're looking at, and you can expect then in the near future to be receiving a copy of the negotiated purchase agreement. The sale price is $2.5 million. That was negotiations that took place last year, and that's the authorized sale price or appropriation for purchase. And so that is really where we're at on the negotiations. I would stand for questions if you have any on that aspect.
All right, that takes us down to interim topics.
Tab V, Mr. Chairman, just a copy of interim topics for both the Joint Ag Committee and the Select Water Committee. And I have highlighted in yellow those items that really pertain to water issues. So I think you can read those at your leisure. The meeting on June 14th, which is a joint ag meeting, commission, I'm not really calling it one of your workshop meetings, but certainly we're going to be in Pinedale for that meeting. On our business meeting is the 15th. You're invited for the meeting on the 14th, and in talking with the chairman, they most definitely would invite your participation in that meeting on the 14th. If you look at priority 2, the first page there under Joint Ag, that is really, for the most part, what's going to happen on June 14th. And then, of course, just continuing on, agency updates are something that I typically do both at their spring and fall meetings. And then you get to Select Water, their priorities that they have been given. Their first priority just deals generally with their review of projects and support of legislation. But priority 2, I think, and I'll read that to you, the committee will consider current issues related to administration of water development program, including the use of funds in water development account 3, water compacts and their impacts on water development, weather modification, water use plans in surrounding states, and how that impacts Wyoming. There was a fair amount of discussion in the legislative session regarding the West Fork Reservoir project, that the request was $40 million, but that wasn't enough to build the project. That appropriation was ultimately cut back to about $4 million. But a lot of questions asked, well, what happens to the dam building program if the water account 3 is emptied? How does it, and I gave testimony as how those funds are replenished. But I think, again, there was a concern, do we really want to draw that down another $40 million? And what does that do for the future of dam building in Wyoming? So I would expect that there will be some discussions with Select Water going forward on that.
And Harry, will you be contacting the commissioners about dates, the committee meetings and that sort of thing?
Well, so if there aren't any questions on those topics, that's what they are going forward. And move then to the last item, which is under tab W, the future schedule.
Are there any questions on the discussion topic before we move to the schedule?
Maybe we ought to do it all at once, because I'm totally confused about where we're going and who's talking about what.
Well, we were on the interim topics, and I asked about notice of committee meetings, which takes us into future meeting schedule. So,
but I thought you were talking about notice of Select Water meetings and ag meetings.
So the schedule now for Joint Ag will have their first meeting in the interim, June 14th, Pinedale. And we have on our schedule, it shows Cheyenne. You should strike Cheyenne. It is in Pinedale. And at that meeting, Select Water will also be present. And the topic generally will be Colorado River issues. That's intended to be a whole day effort. I have made suggestions to the chairman in terms of topics that they may want to consider. One of those is we have a ground-based generator as part of the weather modification program that's close by, so it may involve a tour. I have not yet seen an agenda for the June 14th meeting.
Commissioner Bettis.
Quick question. That interim topic that deals with issues in the Green River Basin seems a little bit vague to me, other than, do they have anything specific that they're leaning towards?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bettis, the discussion I had with the chairman during the legislative session when they were formulating their topics for submittal was they wanted to talk about anything and everything in the Colorado River Basin, specific to Wyoming. So that's why it's targeted to the Green River. That will include weather modification. It will include the demand management efforts that are taking place in the basin. Any number of programs there, and I don't know whether leasing of water will come up again at that meeting. Again, I have not seen the agenda.
And I was guess one thing that was stuck in my mind is this rip wrapping deal going on at Fontenelle.
That may be discussed more in the terms of an update of where that project is at. I think the committees were wanting to look at kind of more broader policy implications going forward in the Green River Basin. But certainly Pat Terrell will be there and talking about the interstate relationship that we have within the basin. So I think it's going to be pretty wide open for topics, and I may have to provide an update on certainly the Fontenelle project. Big Sandy would be included as well as another water development project.
They really need to understand the compact between the lower states and the upper states, because I think this year the lower states are going to put a call on the upper states because they are droughted out.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know what the potential for that is. As I understand the compact, as long as the upper basin is able to deliver 7.5 million acre feet out of Powell, then they cannot call. That is, we are compact compliant at that point in time. And Powell does have adequate resources this year, but as you may have read in the newspaper articles recently, they are expecting a 40% of average inflow into Lake Powell this year based on primarily Colorado River runoff. The Green River was above average, but the Colorado River Basin, when you get into the west slope of Colorado and specifically southwest Colorado, very poor snowpack this year. And that will impact future water supplies. But I believe that certainly Wyoming or the upper basin can provide their compact allocation this year and probably next year. But it remains dire because that reservoir is what, 40% full or 40 to 50% full. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, but I think the Joint Ag Committee and them need to hear about these compacts, that this isn't just our water that's in the Green River and the Colorado. It belongs to 8 states and old Mexico.
Chairman, that's correct. So with that, can we get just a hand count of who plans to attend the Pinedale meeting? Because obviously motel reservations are short that time of year.
And I want to add something to that. I believe it's the WHAM convention at the same time. So with the WHAM, it could be very hard to find a room.
Crowded. But I'm seeing all commissioners, you're raising your hand, you plan to attend. Now, with that schedule, Select Water, as I understand it, again, I haven't seen this, they're working on a schedule. They will be meeting on June 13th as well in Pinedale, taking up other interim topics. And those other interim topics are not water related as far as I know. And then June 14th, totally devoted to water topics. And then we will have our joint commission meeting with Select Water on June 15th in Pinedale.
Well, the 14th will be starting at 8:30, right?
That's subject to the Select Water. It's really a Select Water committee meeting, so they could very well meet at 8. Or I don't have a start time. As soon as I get an agenda,
we need to be over there the 13th.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Bud Fallon?
You said that Select Water was also meeting on the 13th. What would Select Water be talking about that didn't have something to do with us?
Oh, I apologize. I meant joint ag. I said select water.
Okay, I was-
Joint ag, joint ag.
All right, we're good.
Any
Correct
other
me sooner.
questions either about interim topics and or this meeting schedule? Katie has some.
Mr. Chairman, I do have reservations for the commission for the evening of June 13th, Wednesday, for that early morning Thursday meeting, and then also for Thursday night 14th, for our Friday meeting. So I do have reservations for handful of time, but let me know as soon as you know if you will not.
We could leave and get some of that meeting on the 13th in.
Certainly for joint ag. And we've provided to you all of their interim topics so you can see what other things they might address. But as soon as they kick out an agenda, then we'll share that with you.
We could be over there by noon.
Mhm.
The 10th day after.
I could be there early in the morning. They're pretty early.
The 13th, I do not believe will involve water topics for joint ag.
I know, but I just might want to listen in.
Okay.
All right, any other business to discuss?
Mr. Chairman, on your schedule, I will let you know that I'm having discussions with the governor's office with regards to a potential groundbreaking for the Middle Piney Reservoir project that is going to bid, and we expect that you will be considering a contract for award. June meeting is the schedule. And with that, construction potentially starting in July. And so the discussion with the governor's office would be a potential groundbreaking ceremony at the reservoir site in mid-July. They have not shared with me some dates. So as soon as we have a confirmation that the governor wants to move forward with the groundbreaking there, then we will advise you of the dates. And that will be just a very short ceremony at the dam, but and then you can make your travel arrangements. But probably for some, you may need to travel the day before, and then up to the reservoir site's about a 45-minute ride from Big Piney. So unless you're a teenager driving fast, I suppose, then it might go quicker. But
If there's a lot of walking, I probably won't be there.
okay,
You can get all the way up to the site.
drive to the dam.
You ride with me, I can point out all of my dad's old sites.
We expect that. Anything else?
Do you want to talk about?
Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I of course guarantee that all our future meetings will get over this early. So
You can't guarantee that.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
with regards to the August meeting, talking Gillette, it's not listed as Gillette, but Gillette meeting, I guess I'll ask the question, is there anybody that's planning on not being there as Katie makes motel reservations for the August meeting? Everybody planning to attend?
I have already discussed with Katie, but I may drive.
Okay,
So I probably won't be.
all right.
I'll be staying with Sheridan at his ranch.
Maybe all of us will.
I don't believe I'll need a room.
To get sleep in a sheep corral.
Set up a couple.
All right, motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Commissioner Lancaster, second. Commissioner Wagner. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
I will.